Mr. Barrett is also having trouble getting online.
Okay, we'll fit them in a bit. Welcome to meeting number 49 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Finance, pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the committee's motion adopted on Tuesday, April 27th. The committee is meeting to study the subject matter of Bill C-30, an act to implement certain provisions of the budget tabled in Parliament on April 19th, 2021, and other measures. Today's meeting is taking place in hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of January 25th, and the proceedings will be made available via the House Commons website. And so that people are aware, the webcast will always show the person speaking rather than the entirety of the committee. We will start with Biotech Canada, but just before we do that, just a heads up to committee members. On May 27th, we're having some difficulty in getting extended hours to deal with clause by clause. That's now been accomplished, and so we will be able to meet into the evening of Thursday, May 27th, when we're in clause by clause to hopefully finish Bill C-30 that evening, and we'll go from there. I see Mr. Barrett is on there now. Does he want a sound check, Mr. Clerk, before we go to Biotech Canada?
Yes, certainly, Mr. Barrett. If you could go ahead and just test your mic, we'll check with the interpreters in the room how you sound.
Yep, thanks very much, Chair and Clerk. I'm pleased to be joining the Finance Committee today. Appreciate the work of our interpreters, technicians. Great, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, then we'll start with our witnesses. Going to Andrew Casey, President and CEO, Biotech Canada. Welcome, Andrew. Floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much to the committee for this important opportunity and very timely opportunity for Biotech Canada. Maybe by way of introduction, Biotech Canada is the national association that represents Canada's biotech industry. We have some 240 members that are across the country in every single province, with significant clusters or hubs in every province. As I'm sure the minister from PEI and you, Mr. Chair, will attest, there's a thriving one in PEI, but there's one in every single province across the country. Our members are in the biotech space. We do, or the companies do, they develop innovations, biotechnology innovations that are industrial, agricultural, and environmental, health, and life sciences. So we include the large multinational pharmaceutical companies, those that are making the vaccines for the current COVID crisis. But also a lot of, and most of our members are the very early stage companies that have innovations that are being developed for future healthcare crises or challenges, and also, of course, for a planet that is becoming overpopulated and needs solutions for population growth. I'm just going to think back to where we were kind of a year and a half or so ago before the onset of the pandemic. And at that time, everybody sort of looked to this industry for some solutions. They looked for therapeutics. They looked for vaccines. At the time, it looked like vaccines would be at the best 3 years out, maybe 4 years out. But shortly thereafter, we had a couple of very viable vaccine candidates being tested and looked at in the form of Moderna and Pfizer. And in December, vaccines started to go into arms. And then we've had a couple of other vaccines come on through AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson, and more on the horizon, including those from Canada's Medicago and hopefully IMV. So some phenomenal developments in a very short period of time. I think a true testament to science, to the industry, but also to the regulators, both globally, but I think a huge amount of credit goes to the Canadian regulators as well. So here we are, we're now in a position where vaccines are going into arms. We're doing quite well in Canada with vaccination rates going up nicely. I encourage everybody to keep getting vaccinated. And so we have an opportunity to really turn our attention to what lies ahead. And there are two key imperatives, I think, for the government and for society more broadly. One is to prepare for the possibility of a future pandemic or pandemic-like challenge. The other one is the economic rebuild. And as we've seen throughout the pandemic, the industry has continued, this biotech industry has continued to thrive. Investment has flowed to the sector. The companies have continued to move their innovations and discoveries along to a place where they're getting more investment. And that's all been very encouraging. And so when we think about meeting those two objectives of preparing, but also rebuilding, this is a sector that actually can meet on both those objectives. And we have a fantastic foundation upon which to build. Our association represents 240 companies, but there's probably 3 times that number across the country. So we have a great ecosystem in this country upon which to build. And as the Health and Biosciences Economic Strategy Table noted, there are some fantastic companies and innovations and scientists, but we do have some gaps that need to be filled. I think the important thing to notice in this budget is an obvious recognition, excuse me, an obvious recognition of the importance of the sector and the need to fill those gaps, and particularly improving access to investment capital, refinancing of key funding programs, and the building of biomanufacturing capacity as we think about future viruses. So the $2 billion plus commitments that sort of stretch across a number of different parts of the biotech ecosystem is an extremely important investment from our perspective. Very welcome. It does fill some of those gaps. That includes $1 billion that is going into the Strategic Innovation Fund. There's now a dedicated life sciences fund in addition to a venture capital fund, including also important investments into Admari Bioinnovations, Vito Intervac in Saskatoon, Genome Canada, the Stem Cell Network. Really critical investments, I think, across the country into key areas that are going to help build our capacity to respond to a future crisis, but also, I think, recognize the economic importance that the sector can provide. And it also builds on some of the important investments that were made through the pandemic. I think we saw a number of key investments into companies like AbCellera and VBI Vaccines, Medicago and IMV. So all of this combined, I think, are sent some really important signals and puts Canada in a pretty good position to take advantage of the global investment that is moving around the world, looking at biotechnology as a key place to invest. By some estimates, there's somewhere in the area of $60 billion that is out there being invested into the biotechnology sector. But Canada has to stay as competitive as possible and sort of take advantage of that. We've got a fantastic ecosystem, great companies, phenomenally talented researchers and scientists, and we're doing world-leading research. Lots of opportunities, and the budget sort of recognizes this. I think the challenge now is for all of it to come together and tie itself into the investments that are being made globally and really put Canada on the world stage. So we do welcome the budget and certainly the investments that are made. And I will leave it at that and look forward to questions from the committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Casey. Kathy, I'm not sure, Ms. McNaughton, if you've been tested, we'll go to you next if you are. You want to give your mic a shot?
Yes, I have been tested.
Okay, all right. We'll go with you, and then we'll close with Minister Fox. Go ahead, Ms. McNaughton.
Hello, Chair, members of Parliament. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to talk to you about something that's very dear to my heart, EI sickness benefits. My name is Kathy McNaughton, and my common law husband, David Fraser, was diagnosed with esophagus cancer on December 3rd, 2014, on his 50th birthday. Although we were devastated by this news, we were optimistic that we were going to beat this. So we went and we applied for EI sickness benefits, and then we had consultations with our doctors in Halifax, and we came up with a plan. And the plan was he would go through 25 rounds of radiation, 2 bouts of intense chemotherapy where he had a bottle attached to a PICC line, and the medication went through his body 24/7 for 5 days each time. And then we were going to have, after his treatment, he was going to have an operation where his diseased esophagus was going to be taken out and reattached to his stomach and recover. David started his treatment on January 13th, January 3rd, 2015. And I continued to stay home because he had a brother in Halifax that could look after him, and I continued to work. David finished his treatment in the middle of February. He came home, and we were waiting for the surgeon to call to get an appointment for the surgery. 2 days later, the surgeon called with more devastating news. David's cancer had spread to his liver and his aorta, and he was deemed terminal. But we could still continue treatment in New Glasgow, and it would give him up to 3 years to live. So we went for treatment. I continued to work because we needed to, because financially, but I changed my hours, and I went from 4 o'clock in the morning to 12 o'clock in the afternoon so that I could be home with him to give him his medication and his needles that he needed. In the middle of March, his EI sickness ran out. He said, "What are we going to do? How are we going to survive?" And I said, "Don't worry about it. You still have 30 weeks of regular EI. We'll go down and we'll talk to them. They have to help us." Well, we went down to talk to them, and there was nothing they could do. He wasn't allowed to draw that 30 weeks because he wasn't able to work. We were devastated. And I got back in the car and I said, "David, I will promise you that I will change this because this is so wrong. You have 30 weeks of unemployment that you paid into, and you're not allowed to draw it." He started his chemotherapy. We called the disability pension, and we were offered $852 a month to help us financially. This was not enough, but there was nothing else we could do. During that time he was doing his chemotherapy, my sister Kelly wanted a laminate floor installed. And David told me one day when I come home from work, he said, "I'm going to install that floor for her." And I said, "David, you can't. You're not strong enough." He said, "I have to." He said, "I have to help you financially so we can get through this." So I said, "Okay, we'll do it." So I went up with him, and I carried the boards over to him, and he cut them, and he shimmied across that floor, and he laid that laminate flooring, and it broke my heart. So he said it set him back physically a lot, but mentally it really helped because he finally was able to contribute and help me pay the bills. David passed away on August 4th, 2015, 8 months after his battle with esophagus cancer, 1.5 months after he laid that floor. I started David's cause in September of 2015. I started off with Tim Houston, our local MLA. We had a change of government, and he introduced me to Sean Fraser. And Sean and I ran with this. We had to get my story out there because this was so wrong that people were worrying about financial situations when they were dying. I worked with Canadian Cancer Society, and finally, after 7 years, my story was heard, and my promise to David has been fulfilled. But on the 2021-22 budget, EI sickness benefits will change from 15 weeks to 26 weeks. This is huge. This will help over 169,000 Canadians a year that are fighting a serious illness or injury. My takeaway to the panel today is please don't view this as a political issue. View this as a humane and personal issue so those 169,000 Canadians will not have to go through the financial worries that David went through while fighting for his life. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Kathy, and our sympathies on your loss, and certainly our congratulations on your taking up the challenge and taking on the fight and moving the political system, which is, as we very well know, very hard to move. We'll turn now to Minister Jamie Fox with the Department of Fisheries and Communities, the Honorable Jamie Fox. And just to give you a location on Minister Fox, if you ever drive across Confederation Bridge, you can near wave at him as you come off that bridge. That's the area he lives in. Floor is yours, Jamie. Go ahead.
Well, thanks very much, Wayne, and good afternoon to the committee. And it is a pleasure to be here today. And it's quite a story that you expressed here, Katie, too. So my thoughts with you and your family. But I'd like to thank everybody today for this opportunity to speak to the Finance Committee in regards to an issue that's very important to us, and it's on the marine sectors in our Atlantic Canada. The seafood sector in Atlantic Canada in 2020 had exports of more than $4.5 billion and is responsible for supporting tens of thousands of jobs across mainly rural coastal communities. The Department of Fisheries and Oceans, DFO, has a very challenging task of managing over 1,000 harbors across this country. And I want to recognize the work they do, especially in Eastern Canada, which accounts for 80% of Atlantic Canada's fishing harbors. And we all understand the importance of addressing this essential infrastructure. I have had conversations directly with my fellow Atlantic ministers as of this morning to bring them up to speed, and we are all in agreement. The provinces of Newfoundland and Labrador infrastructure needs to be put in place. We all in agreement that the timing is right to support the federal government's approach to post-pandemic efforts to build back better and the blue economy. And I have met with the PEI Fishermen's Association and the Prince Edward Islands Aquaculture Alliance, and they all raised the urgent need for their members are facing every day regarding many harbors across Prince Edward Island, and their need for repairs, which is the same story facing Newfoundland and Labrador, Nova Scotia, and New Brunswick. While we are very pleased to see the additional investments proposed in the 21-22 federal budget of $300 million over the next 2 years, we feel that this is a short-term approach and is not conducive for sound and strategic long-term investment planning and infrastructure. An evaluation of the Small Craft Harbors program in 2013 specifically stated having to rely on substantial funding beyond the program's base budget indicates that the program lacks sufficient funding for lifetime and life cycle management. It was also documented in the 2019 report of the Standing Committee on Fisheries and Oceans that the annual funding required to keep all core fishing harbors in good working condition is estimated to be at $150 million annually. But the average A-base annual budget remains at approximately 75 to 85 million, excluding salaries and overhead. And this is according to the Assistant Deputy Minister for Fisheries and Harbor Management at DFO. For the past 2 years, I have been proposing that there needs to be a strategic 5-year investment plan in addition to the existing budget of $1 billion. I, along with my colleagues, have heard from industry loud and clear. Users of these facilities are appreciative of the repairs and investments that are being made each year, but they are consistently identified that there are more work that needs to be done with budget allocations won't allow. Much of the marine infrastructure under the responsibility of DFO is decades old. The need for repairs and new investments is beyond the current budget allocations. Climate change is also bringing more frequent and severe weather events in Eastern Canada, which are further impacting our aged infrastructure. I'll point out in some cases with our storm surges that we're seeing, some of our wharfs are actually even with the top of the water, or the water is covering over top of a wharf. Frankly, much of the existing infrastructure was not originally designed to deal with the current impacts of more severe associated storms and this climate change. What is needed is a long-term approach that will support strategic planning and engagement with all groups to identify what supports they need in the area of current and future essential infrastructure to continue growing our marine sectors. For example, the average marine economy GDP increased by 25% in Eastern Canada and by 45% in PEI from 2014 to 2018. And it is also widely known that over time, the needs our commercial fisher have evolved. The vessel and gear are larger, and the value of investments made by fishers have increased to the point where they're not comfortable docking a vessel valued at hundreds of thousands of dollars to a condemned wharf. Our aquaculture sector has also grown substantially, and these businesses require access from ice out to ice in, and in some years, they have allowed the boats to stay in year round. They can also face challenges and issues of access and space limitations, not to mention access to safe navigation. We do not need to look further than Malpeque Harbor, which the chair is very familiar with. For example, it has been well studied for over 2 decades on how, despite everyone's best efforts, more needs to be done. And we can see how climate change is affecting that one harbor. As we see light at the end of this pandemic, our marine sectors are positioned well to contribute its part in having our economic economies succeed. Canada is well-renowned reputation for producing some of the highest quality seafood protein. However, we cannot grow our exports if we do not have the strategic investments into the essential marine infrastructure that supports our seafood production. Increased long-term investments into marine infrastructure will support the seafood sectors, which are in alignment with the federal government's discussions around the Blue Economy strategy. It will position Canada to build on its international reputation of being a net exporter of quality food products. It will also support the marine sectors, which are in alignment with the federal government's commitment to build better as we move to recovery phase of this pandemic. We will support job creation and investment in the marine construction and repair sector. We will mitigate and strategically plan for the impacts of climate change, which is resulting in more severe and frequent weather events. We will also ensure a more effective, efficient, and productive long-term planning and procurement. And lastly, and ultimately, support small rural coastal communities and the small businesses that rise around these communities. While the proposed increase in the budget of 2021 of $300 million over the next 2 years is recognized as a good start, I would like to put forward to the federal government has an opportunity with the Department of Fisheries and Oceans and the Canadian Coast Guard to demonstrate its support for the Canadian marine sectors by developing a strategic long-term marine infrastructure investment plan, such as our supporting marine infrastructure plan that was provided to DFO with the endorsement of all the Atlantic Ministers of Fisheries and Aquaculture. I would like to thank the House of Commons Standing Committee on Finance for this opportunity to speak today. This is a very important issue to Prince Edward Island and Atlantic Canada. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister Fox, for your remarks, and thanks to all the witnesses. And line up for the first round of questions will be for 6 minutes each. Mr. Fast, Ms. Kotrakis, Mr. St. Marie, and Mr. Julian. Ed, you're on.
Well, thank you to all of our witnesses, and I wanted to begin by also expressing my condolences to Ms. McNaughton for the loss of her husband. And I wanted to assure you, Katie, that I believe there's unanimous support here around the table for these EI sickness benefits and the extension of those. In fact, some of us had asked for the EI sickness benefits to be extended even longer and had expressed that in the House. And so I think you're going to find that this budget and what it contains on that issue will have full support, although some of us may not be able to support the budget in its entirety because of other reasons. But on that one issue, I want to assure you, I believe we're all on the same page. I wanted to go to Minister Fox for a moment. You've made it very clear that you're looking for a long-term strategic approach to marine infrastructure so that that can help drive economic growth in your region of the country. And by the way, that's not so much different from my neck of the woods where we're on the West Coast. We have our own challenges with respect to our fishery sector, the declining salmon stocks. And so we're all scrambling, trying to address these very immediate emergent issues that need to be addressed. But you had talked about this long-term infrastructure plan And I'd like to know what that would look like, because I believe you signaled that a plan had been presented to the government some time ago, but hasn't been acted on, certainly not in its entirety. If you want to expand on that a little bit more.
Thank you, Ed. Yes, a couple of years ago, after traveling the province, when I got first into this portfolio, I started to hear from industry directly and see the condition of our wharfs and harbors across Prince Edward Island, for example. And then we started monthly meetings with the regional ministers, and they were having the exact same problem. So our department come up with a supporting marine infrastructure plan, and I brought that forth to the other ministers. They supported it, and then we put it into Minister Jordan's office. Basically, though, if you look at the country, we've had major infrastructure plans when it comes to our water and our sewers, our highways, our marine rail, or all that major type of infrastructure. But there's never been an infrastructure plan specifically targeting our marine industries as it applies to our fishery and our aquaculture. And that's specifically what we have put forward to the federal government.
Okay. Have you got any idea of the total infrastructure deficit when it comes to small craft harbors in your neck of the woods?
Well, it's DFO is doing the best they can. The problem is you have an A base and you have a B base funding, and the A base funding has never actually increased. So year after year, DFO is consistently allocated with the same amount of funds that they're trying to spread across the repairs. So if I do some rough math and we look at the 300 million over 2 years based across the whole country, which that's being spread out, that infrastructure to us would be $12 to $15 million per year increase of budget on our small craft harbors. Now let's bring in Malpeque Harbor. Malpeque Harbor, we're chewing up around $1.5 million, if not a little bit more, on dredging of that harbor alone. Not also looking at the other harbors because of the sifting sands, and we live on basically a sandstone rock. The money is not there to adequately keep these infrastructure in place. And you can compare that also to other provinces when you see the infrastructure has been put in place and how old it actually is.
Yeah, well, my question was really directed at, if you take all of the small craft harbors in Atlantic Canada and you look at the value of the infrastructure deficit, the work that has to be done to bring them up to a current state of repair. Have you ever done an evaluation of what that might look like? Because that obviously is going to drive the size of the program you're looking for.
Well, when we first looked at the program and developed it, looking at what we were hearing from the other provinces, we were thinking $750 million over 5 years. And that will be distributed across the maritime region, and that should bring us up to a level of a good repair for the future. But now with the pandemic and the price of infrastructure going forward, we're raising that to somewhere around $1 billion.
Okay, that's very helpful. Talk to me about Malpeque Harbor, which would be of great interest to Mr. Easter, and specifically the deficits you see in that harbor, and perhaps the costs of what it would take to address those concerns.
Malpeque Harbor is centrally located up in the Waynes area there. I'm very familiar with it. It sees basically 44 fishing boats or fishing fleets of lobster going out every day and during the season, and probably 10 to 15 other aquaculture industry users there. But what the problem is in Malpeque Harbor is we have sifting sand. So in order for DFO to consistently keep that channel and harbor open and dealing with the sifting sand, they're having to dredge it twice and sometimes 3 times a year, spring, summer, and then fall, to actually ensure safe passage. And as Wayne can attest to, they're actually falling behind in that because you're dealing with sand. So we must make sure the infrastructure is actually brought up to date with what climate change is actually doing. And that's what's affecting Malpeque, is climate change.
Mm-hmm. Ms. McNaughton, if I could go to you for a moment. You've made a very compelling case that EI sickness benefits need to be expanded to address the reality of the challenges that people who are really sick face. And your husband's case is a perfect example of that. The 26 weeks that the budget proposes, would that fully address the concerns that you and your husband faced in trying to make it through that very difficult time?
No. we need more than 26 weeks. David would still have been alive 2 months after his, if this change was in there to help us. 26 weeks is a massive improvement, but I think it should be more.
Okay.
And I'm hoping that we go one step at a time, and eventually that everybody will realize that these sick Canadians need that money.
Yeah, as long
Okay,
as
we are gonna
One
end
last-
it there.
one last comment, Wayne.
I'll already let you go ahead.
Okay, just wanted to assure you, Ms. McNaughton, that there are quite a number of us here on this call that actually do support extending it beyond the 26 weeks, because we believe there is a big gap there, and hopefully over time we'll get the consensus in Parliament to be able to do that.
Thank you all. Just to put your question to Minister Fox in perspective, Ed, a dredge is on site full time now, and that's costing well over $1 million, $1 million to $1.5 million a year. And the port has to be moved, and it cost $42 million to move that harbor.
Thank you.
Turning then to Ms. Katrakis, followed by Mr. St. Marie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses for being here this morning with us. Firstly, to Ms. McNaughton, I can't begin to tell you how your story, or yours and your husband's story, really touched my heart. My mom went through breast cancer, and I was a primary caregiver at the time through her surgery, her radiation, and her chemotherapy. Unfortunately, we lost her just a little bit over a year ago, and strangely enough, not from breast cancer. But I can't even begin to imagine what a family goes through having to also worry about finance. So thank you for feeling safe enough to share your story here with us. I think I can speak for all of us here. We understand, and we're going to keep working hard to make sure that people that need the help through EI sick benefits will get the help. My questions will be directed to Mr. Casey. Mr. Casey, in Biotech Canada's response to our budget 2021, you said that biotechnology innovation is one of, and I'm quoting, the key identified sectors set to drive the economic recovery for Canada. Would you be able to expand a little bit and explain to this committee why you believe this to be the case?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for that question. I think if you look across the country, it's an industry that has, as I indicated in the outset, it's got clusters in every single province, usually built around universities or research institutes. So it builds on our infrastructure that we've already put in place and the investments that we've put into our universities. The companies themselves, if you look across the country, and let's take some examples, right? You have AbCellera, which had a fantastic IPO during the pandemic. You've had Notch Therapeutics, Zymeworks. These are Vancouver companies. You have Repair in Montreal, Medicago, Quebec City. These are companies that, with these investments, as their technologies become more proven and get closer to being commercial, will be employing hundreds of people. And we're talking about very skilled, high-paid jobs. You're talking about people that are coming out of our universities and colleges, technical colleges, with very significant skill sets, PhDs in science, and sort of all those investments that we've put into the STEM programs. This is going to be the receptor capacity for those people. And when we talk about some of the jobs, you're talking about millions of dollars that are going into these companies, and the technologies that they're working on will eventually create large-scale companies. We'd like to create anchor companies in Canada where we have companies that are globally competitive that are here in this country. I mean, if you take it as an example, RIM BlackBerry, and look what that did for the Kitchener-Waterloo area. If you create some anchor companies in this space, the spin-offs and the more investment it's a sort of that fantastic cycle that just attracts more investment, attracts more people, and grows. So the enormous potential that the sector presents is I think, just fantastic, and it's shown itself even during the pandemic when times were tough. Investment kept flowing and the companies kept growing.
You also said in your testimony earlier that although the budget is friendly to the biotech industry, but there are some gaps. would you be able to elaborate a little bit more on where the gaps are and how the federal government, what can we do to do better?
Well, the gaps that we've seen, I think the budget goes a long way to identifying those and starting to address them as well. So some of the primary gaps are always going to be the same for the sector. Then there are two main ones. One is investment capital, access to investment. It's very expensive to take an idea and commercialize it. So you have to go through, in the case of health, vaccines and other therapeutics, you have to go through clinical trials. So you're talking anywhere between $1 billion and 10 to 15 years in time. So you require very specific type of investors, patient investors with great deep knowledge. And you need a lot of capital. You look at some of the investments in these companies, you're talking about a sort of initial Series A round of $85 million into Notch Therapeutics in Vancouver. It's just an example. So that's an early stage company that's getting $85 million. Venture capital sort of moves around the world like a tourist, and it looks for places to stay where it finds itself to be most attractive and the safest place to go. And so we have to behave like a hotel would to attract tourists. You put chocolates on the pillow if you're a hotel, free Wi-Fi, breakfast, whatever it is. So whatever we do as a country, if we're going to think of ourselves as a hotel, what is the chocolate on the pillow that we have to put out there to attract investors? That's where you get into tax policy. That's where you get into IP issues. So you have to have a jurisdiction that, from a regulatory standpoint, that is welcoming to investors, but it also provides the opportunity for the companies to grow. So that's a huge part. The government obviously provides the hosting conditions. The same goes for talent. Talent roaming around the world, including our own very skilled Canadians who are going to go to places where the jobs are. So we have to make sure that we're attracting as much talent as possible to allow these companies. So those will be the two key areas. And I think the investments in the budgets go a long way to addressing some of those and making us a more attractive jurisdiction from that standpoint.
Last question, Annie.
Thank you. We hear a lot about climate change, the environment, which of course is very important and something that we really, really need to be, doing, putting a lot of effort and attention to. What role, in your opinion, can the biotech industry play in the fight against climate change?
And again, another really important area. So if you look at our membership, we have industrial, environmental, and agricultural biotech companies in our membership as well. And they're really providing solutions that address some of those exact challenges that you're talking about. We have a global population that's going to be going to 8, 9, 10 billion, depending on which projection you look at. Putting enormous pressure on the planet. We have to fundamentally change the way we live our lives, the way we grow, the way we manufacture, and biotechnology allows for that. So we've got companies that are doing environmental remediation. They're allowing other companies to adjust. You've got car parts being made of soy products. That's the result of biotechnology. So all sorts of fantastic solutions coming out of the Canadian biotech sector that are addressing those challenges. But And in doing that, you have enormous economic opportunity if you can be there first. But of course, other jurisdictions recognize the economic importance of getting there. And so we're competing with other countries to sort of keep those companies, but also attract the investment and the talent. The challenge is the exact same in that space as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Turning then to Mr. St. Marie, followed by Mr. Julian. Gabriel.
Oui, merci.
Thank you, Wayne. So, Honorable Minister Fox, Ms. McNaughton, and Mr. Casey, good morning and thank you for being here today. Thank you for your presentations. Ms. McNaughton, I also wish to offer you my most sincere condolences, and I thank you for being here today and for your very touching testimony. And indeed, as my colleague Ed Fast said, we all agree here on this measure. And as he also said, my party had put forward a motion to increase the benefits to 52 weeks a year. So all of these people who have to fight against all kinds of cancers and should have this money. And we're going to continue to work on this and increase the EI sickness benefits to at least 50 weeks so that there's better coverage. You can count on us for that. And now I would have a first question for the Honourable Minister Fox. I would like to know, and I'd like you to comment on the situation of about the port of Cap aux Meules in the Magdalen Islands. They've lost 37% of its capacity because of the degradation of the facilities, and people there are criticizing the absence of any plan to rebuild the wharf. So is this a situation that you see also in Prince Edward Island, and what should the federal government do about it? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gabriel. Yeah, I only caught part of the question because I had to switch over from for the translator there, but it's the same type of problem we're seeing over in our area too. And I think a long-term approach, recognizing the age of our infrastructure, is needed moving forward. And any money that the federal government puts into our infrastructure, it must be, or I should say, into the budget, must be in comparison with the age of the infrastructure that we're dealing with. If that answers the question.
Oui, merci.
Yes, thank you very much. Another question for you that's more general. What is your government's position in terms of health funding from Ottawa? So in your opinion, is Ottawa doing enough, and is there enough in this budget? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Gabriel. But I wouldn't really be prepared to speak on that today. I think that would be best put forth between to the health minister, Mr. For the province. He would be the best person to deal with that. But I say it wouldn't be fair for me to answer on behalf of the province or the Premier's office on that matter today.
Okay, merci.
Okay, thank you. Because from what I've understood, there's a consensus among the governments of the provinces to ask Ottawa to fund 35% of healthcare costs rather than 23%. And the Prime Minister in Ottawa said that he was open to having a discussion with his counterparts, but that he'd do so after the pandemic. And in our opinion, sooner would be better, given that we're in the midst of a healthcare crisis. But I thank you for the answer. Do you wish to comment on that, or should I continue with my questions?
No, that'd be fine.
Très bien.
Fine, it's fine. Thank you. The next question is for Mr. Casey. Thank you for your presentation. With the pandemic, do you feel that it's important that Canada deploy a new capacity for producing vaccines?
I'll be very there's a couple of parts of this answer. We have significant capacity in Canada for manufacturing vaccines. There was a bit of a misunderstanding early on. What we did not have was the capacity to manufacture mRNA vaccines. So when those were the first ones that came out, that's a new technology, and we did not have the capacity to manufacture those particular types of vaccines. The GSK plant in Quebec City and the Sanofi plant in Toronto both use traditional protein-based vaccines, which is, you can't interchange them. They're two completely different technologies. The Medicago facility in Quebec City uses a plant-based technology for vaccines. They're in phase 2 clinical trials right now. It looks very promising. They just released their data last week, or earlier this week, I should say. Looks very good that they will actually have a COVID-19 vaccine probably later this summer, early fall, which is very encouraging news. They have a significant facility that the government of Quebec and the federal government has invested in, and that's going to be coming online as well this fall. We still need to develop more. There is going to be COVID-32, COVID-40, whatever it is, we have to prepare for that. And I think what we need to do now is to figure out where we need to fill gaps in the biomanufacturing capacity and look at different ways to do that so that we are ready for the next one.
Merci.
Thank you for your answer. That is encouraging news, and I can tell you that there's a member of my team is in the group testing for the Medicago vaccine, and let's hope that we'll get it as soon as possible. It's certainly a great source of pride for us. Mr. Casey, in the 90s, if I look at the pharmaceutical industry, not just biotech, but the whole industry in Quebec, there was a wonderful synergy between policies in Quebec and Ottawa that allowed for the attraction of international players to develop expertise. But unfortunately, Ottawa slowly abandoned its support of these industries. So we, in the end, saw 5 major companies leave. Now, you said yourself there are interesting aspects of the budget, but should Ottawa do more to create this environment that will attract these kinds of experts to come back to Canada?
That's a very important question. And I think what also happened a decade or so ago is that the industry itself changed. So they changed the way they develop drugs. It used to be that a Pfizer, GlaxoSmithKline, or a Merck, whatever it is, would do everything in-house for itself. Now what happens is they do some research and development internally, but most of it they go out and hunt and gather. They go and find companies elsewhere. I'll use a really great example given the COVID-19 situation. The vaccine that Pfizer has is a combination of a number of different companies. One is BioNTech out of Germany, but the other part of the Pfizer vaccine that very few people know about is a company called Acuitas, which is a small Canadian biotech company in Vancouver. They developed the lipid envelope in which the mRNA code goes into and then goes into the body. Without the Acuitas technology, the Pfizer vaccine doesn't really work. This is the new type of drug development that's taking place. We have to develop all these early stage companies that then go into the bigger technologies. They will either be bought by the large pharmaceutical companies or they'll be large commercial companies themselves, depending on the type of technology that they're developing. What we need to do is develop a new relationship with the large multinational companies and the early stage companies and the government that recognizes this new approach to developing drugs. And that requires everybody to come together and I think create a different pathway for regulatory approval, but also for reimbursement and listings. It's a very complex area to get into in this committee, but I do think a recognition that that part of the world has changed. And if we want to attract more manufacturing here, more investment here, a new relationship is required from that standpoint. So that's a great question. Thank you.
Thank you all. We're considerably over, but we needed to hear the full answer. Mr. Julian, followed by Mr. Falk. Mr. Julian? 6 minutes or around about that.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. And I should signal that after my questioning of witnesses, I'm going to have to step out for a few minutes. So for my second round, the 2.5 minutes, certainly could go to Monsieur Saint-Marie or to Ms. May.
Okay.
And I'd like to thank all of our witnesses for coming forward. Very interesting testimony, of course, and we hope that you and your families are staying safe and healthy during this pandemic. I'd like to start with you, Ms. McNaughton. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us and David's story with us, and it certainly resonates. There is no doubt, as you've heard from a number of members of the committee. Your story is heartfelt, and I think we all understand the importance of that. You have talked about the 26 weeks, and you've said we should go beyond that. There will be an amendment coming up next week to this Budget Implementation Act that would actually take the sickness leave to 1 year. So a full year of supports for Canadians who are experiencing what you and David experienced. How would you feel about having sick leave extended to a full year? We certainly have the resources in our country to provide those supports for a full year of EI sick leave. Would you support that measure?
Definitely. When I first started David's cause, I wanted 52 weeks, but I just thought I was asking for the stars. So Sean and I worked with this, and we came up with the 26 weeks, and it was a good start. I didn't want it to finish there, but it was a good start. So it will give people in the future that much more support. But you can't put a time limit on it because each individual is different. Like if David would have lived, it would have been 3 years, and we wouldn't have had financial help for 3 years. So it's definitely 52 weeks. I think would be much better than 26, but 26 is a great start.
Thank you so much for that. And definitely in a country where we're able to provide $750 billion in liquidity supports for Canada's big banks, we can afford to provide supports for a year or longer. And thank you very much for your response to my question. I'd like to go to Minister Fox next. You've laid out very eloquently the case of underfunding in terms of maintenance of harbors. One real challenge that we're experiencing in British Columbia is DFO not removing derelict vessels. So in many harbor areas, we just see vessels that have been abandoned, and it has been quite an effort to get the federal departments to actually step up and remove those vessels. Is that a problem in Prince Edward Island? Do you see that as a problem nationally, that the Fisheries and Oceans isn't stepping up to remove derelict vessels, whether they're abandoned by companies or by individuals?
That's a very good question. I guess the example I would use would be the old HMCS Cormorant, which was decommissioned from the Canadian Navy, and then it sat derelict in Nova Scotia for many years. When we have pieces of infrastructure like that sitting, basically rotting away at our wharfs and our harbors, it's also it's affecting our ecosystem, it's affecting our aquaculture, it's affecting the actual environment around it. So we need to ensure that the laws, that there's measures in place that will get them derelict vessels out of the water and decommissioned completely, so that they are not contaminating our environment. Because if we are contaminating our environment, whether it be on the West Coast or the East Coast, there is an effect on the ecosystem and the fish species.
Thank you very much for that. I'd like to go to Mr. Casey now. Mr. Casey, there's been a lot of discussion about the role of the public sector in the development of vaccines and medication. Of course, when we have had the National Research Council, they will be providing more research. Many people talk about Connaught Laboratories, which was publicly owned until it was sold out by a previous government. And so for many people, they want to rebuild the publicly owned infrastructure. Of course, when we think of insulin, Canadian invention, public domain, no Canadian, every Canadian is proud of that history. So what role does the public sector play in preparing us for what is inevitably, sadly, the next pandemic? And to what extent do you believe we should be making those investments for publicly owned and publicly mandated research?
Yeah, I think that's a really important question. Let's hope that there is not another pandemic, right? I mean, but I think it would be foolish not to prepare for it. And I think that what the government is doing is recognizing that and putting some different investments there. The insulin example is a good one as reflecting back onto my opening comments, in that insulin is celebrating its 100th anniversary, or the discovery of insulin is celebrating its 100th anniversary. It is now the bedrock of a company called Novo Nordisk, which is based in Denmark. I would argue that if we do everything correctly here in Canada, whatever today's insulin is should be the Canada Disc or whatever company. We should have that anchor company. That should be a large multinational company that's based here. So I think we need to do that right. The investments in some of the public programs, are like the NRC, which has the IRAP, which is the Industrial Research Assistance Program, are absolutely critical to a lot of the early stage companies. It's most of our early stage companies point to IRAP, SR&ED, all those sorts of investments through programming as absolutely critical to their early stage development. There's a number of companies today that would point back to their history and say that was critical in their development. I think the one important thing to remember, though, in terms of investing for facilities going forward for a future pandemic, is that in between crises, they have to be active. You cannot mothball them, put paper on the windows and plastic on the doors, turn the lights out, and then only come back to the next crisis. You have to think of it like an Olympic athlete, which doesn't sit on the couch and drink beer and eat chips in between the Olympics. It trains. And you have to do the same thing with our infrastructure. So if we're going to invest in infrastructure, it needs to be commercial. It can support the ecosystem. It can support research and development in early stage companies and be commercial at the same time. And when the next crisis comes, it's ready to go so that it's up to code. It's got the right people in the facility and it's ready to go. And I think that's an absolutely critical part of what we're going to do if we're going to develop biomanufacturing capacity in this country.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll go to a 5-minute round. Mr. Falk, followed by Mr. Fraser. Ted?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses for being here and for your testimony this morning. Ms. McNaughton, I too want to extend my sympathies to you on the passing of your husband, David, and for the pain and anxiety that you had to endure. And you know, yesterday at committee, we had the Canadian Cancer Society here, and they told us that just from smoking, there's 48,000 people annually that die from cancer. And we know, as in David's case, there's many other types of cancer, as in his case, esophagus cancer. And so you should note that your testimony today here is very valuable, and that you are advocating for tens of thousands of people who find themselves in a similar situation as you and David did. And so your testimony is important. I want to thank you for it. It's not being lost on this committee. So thank you for being here. Minister Fox, it's also very nice to have you here this morning. And I'm wondering, I'll just throw up a question that you could comment on. When you look at the federal budget, that this Budget Implementation Act that we're studying here today, does it meet the immediate and urgent needs of PEI from your perspective for the fisheries?
It's a start, Ted. It's a start to recognize that we need more in DFO when it comes to fisheries. But I can take you to various harbors across Prince Edward Island. If you were to give me $15 million today, based on that $300 million, I could use that $15 million basically overnight on harbors that need repaired immediately. Rustico, for example. But it wouldn't even address what the issue is in Malpeque and the need immediately for a long-term solution for that harbor and wharf. So it's a good start, but we need to look at a long-term infrastructure plan as it pertains to wharfs and harbors across Atlantic Canada, and I would even add in British Columbia.
Okay, and how about protecting and growing your fishing inventory, your raw goods, so to speak?
Well, we work very closely with the AFF funding. I've had conversation with Minister Jordan on that. I suggested to her back last year that I would either see us start the AFF funding 2 phase sooner than later. We've only got 2 years left on AFF, so we need to recognize that. In PEI, our industry is growing when it comes to lobster and aquaculture, so there is room to grow, and we must make sure we have the supports in there to help these industries grow as the demand increases with the need for protein.
Okay, good. Thank you. Mr. Casey, I'd like to ask you a few questions as well. Your association has over 200 members as part of your association. Are most of the pharmaceuticals, are all of them part of your association?
You're talking about the large multinational companies?
Correct.
Yes, most of them. Yeah.
Okay. And you had indicated earlier in your testimony that the industry here in Canada has capacity and had capacity to meet demands that were there so far as producing vaccines, with the exception of the mRNA technology, where you said we did not have that capacity. Was your association approached by the government for help?
Yes, in the sense that what I think the government did was really smart. So in the early days, if you recall back, as I said in my opening remarks, it was seen to be that vaccines would be 3 to 5 years based on the Ebola experience. So we sort of knew that was going to be the most optimistic outlook. That the realistic possibility was, or the more realistic possibility was, therapeutics that would alleviate the symptoms and stop people from dying. So a lot of interest was in that area. And I think what the government did was really smart, which is set up 2 task forces. One was for vaccines and one for therapeutics. And they tapped into our industry for advice. And there are others from around academic and the medical community as well, but a number of key people from our community were on those task forces to help advise the government in terms of making those decisions.
Okay, I've got one follow-up question. I think I'm going to be out of time then. You made a comment as well that the 2 technologies, mRNA and the protein technologies, are not interchangeable. There's been some discussion about taking one vaccine from one technology and then taking a follow-up vaccine from a different technology. Can you just comment briefly on that? You said they were not compatible, not interchangeable. Did I misunderstand something?
From a manufacturing standpoint. So it would be like champagne and 7-Up are clear liquids that are bubbly. You put them in bottles and you drink them out of glasses. That's where the similarity ends. You cannot ask Moët to make 7-Up, and you can't ask 7-Up to make Moët, right? So the manufacturing technology is completely different. As far as the administration of the vaccines, I will not answer that question. That I will leave to the experts, Health Canada, and the physicians that provide that advice. And so I cannot.
Okay, I thought maybe you would know that, but
just the manufacturing.
We
thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Turning then to Mr. Fraser, who will be followed by Mr. St. Marie. Sean.
Thanks so much, Chair. My first question will be to Ms. McNaught. Kathy, it's wonderful to see you here. Thank you so much for giving your heart-wrenching testimony. I think it serves as a reminder that there's a human impact behind all the policies that we get to debate in Parliament, and I think we would all do well to remember your testimony when we think about various issues that come across our plate in our day-to-day work. One of the things that I think is important, look, you've told your story better than I ever could, and I thank you for letting me be part of it. And I think you were very generous in your comments, but to the extent any credit is owed here, it's squarely on you. One of the things I've been blown away with from the time that I've met you was your persistence on this issue, and the fact that you, I think you described yourself as an ordinary woman from Westville who's made this, helped make this change. For those who might be tuning in today, Kathy showed up at an event we hosted when the Prime Minister was visiting with a shirt that said, "Ask me about David's cause." She ended up, when she heard that Minister Duclos, who was previously responsible for the EI file, was coming to the town of Antigonish, she drove down the highway so she could get a chance to make her case there. She met with our former colleague, Mark Eiking, who's been alive to this issue for a number of years. And more recently, she connected with the Canadian Cancer Society, who was working simultaneously on this issue and started using the language of David's cause in their communications. Kathy, this is a remarkable example of an individual launching an advocacy campaign that really caught on, and I think you can take some faith from my opposition colleagues today that there is cross-partisan support for this initiative, which is absolutely terrific. Can you share a message with Canadians who might be tuned in about the importance of advocating for a cause you believe in, though you may just be an ordinary woman from Westville?
This cause was very dear to me. To watch David suffer physically and mentally over the financing. I just want to tell every Canadian that if you believe in yourself and you believe in your cause, you can move mountains. And I'm proof of it. I moved a mountain, and so many people are going to benefit from this. And my David story was part of this that made this change. And you just got to keep fighting until somebody hears you.
Well, look, I can tell you thousands upon thousands of people have heard you. I had the chance to take part in a debate that I believe also had cross-partisan support in the last Parliament on this issue. And when I shared a video that referred to your story, I got messages from hundreds of people across Canada who said, "I thought you were talking about my family, and I want you to pass on my gratitude to Kathy for helping make this change a reality." So you've done a heck of a lot of good, and I look forward to seeing this extension be part of Canadian law. My next question, Mr. Casey, you described very interestingly of creating a hotel type analogy, placing the chocolate on the pillow. There's something that I find fascinating that I'm hearing across different sectors more recently, despite the immense challenges that COVID has put on our economy. There's still significant sectors that are worried about labor shortages. There are some that have been hammered hard, but particularly when you're looking for very specific talent, it can be hard to come by. In your sector, I'm wondering if you have advice for us when it comes to attracting talent to a province like Nova Scotia or a country like Canada. What conditions do we need to create for the world's brightest minds to choose our communities as a place to live and work?
Yeah, it's a really important. So it's just as important as investment is. The talent piece is absolutely critical, and we have to be as competitive because talent, as I said earlier, is also very mobile. So it's moving around. And the problem that we've got, unlike if you take mining, oil and gas, and forest products, which also have to attract talent and investment, if they don't do so, you can't take a mine and pack it up and move it somewhere else. Our industry essentially are just good ideas, and they're on computers or laptops. And if we don't attract the investment and the talent to Canada, the good idea will go elsewhere and be commercialized elsewhere. And all the economic benefits that come from that commercialization will benefit wherever they go. So we have to be as competitive as possible. One of the things right now, it doesn't seem like it's an acute problem in terms of attracting talent. We've got a fantastic pool coming out of our universities and colleges. It seems like the companies are able to fill their roles. If you look at Zymeworks and Acceleras and Repairs, they're all growing in leaps and bounds, and they seem to be able to find the people. I do think, though, as we get bigger and as the economy sort of open up and the talent starts to flow again, that's when we have to get concerned to make sure that we're as attractive as possible. I'm working with a number of our companies that are really growing quite quickly to sort of identify the areas that we can improve, whether it's immigration policy, recognizing that usually when you're attracting one person from another country, you usually have a spouse that is equally skilled and talented, and we have to bring both. How can we facilitate that? Are there tax incentives or breaks that we can provide? I think there's all sorts of different options that we have to look at other jurisdictions to understand what they're doing and maybe stay as competitive as possible with those jurisdictions and mimic what they're doing.
Mr. Chair, have I got any additional time?
No, you are over time. And we will go. We've got enough time for 5 members to take 5 minutes each. We'll start with Mr. St. Marie, Ms. Jansen, Ms. Fragaskatis, Mr. Barrett, and Ms. Zerowitz. Gabriel.
Oui, merci.
Thank you, Wayne. So, Mr. Casey, thank you for having well described how the ecosystem of your environment works. So, you've well described that there are lots of new startups that are launching in your sector. Can the government do something to bring this to a new level, rather than having them discover something and then turn immediately to a major player? Could we do something to help them to grow and put down roots? What could the government do?
It is definitely a key objective that we have to strive for. So we have to create anchor companies. We've been very good as a country at creating a lot of early stage companies. And as you indicate in your question, many of those are sold off. And so they go to the large multinational companies. Now, part of that is an absolute business strategy that is a reality. You have a small product, one single drug. You recognize you want to sell it to the world. You need the infrastructure that the large companies provide. You're never going to become a big pharma company overnight. So you will pursue that path. For others that have platform-like technologies or manufacturing capacity, so like a Medicago and Accelera, Repair, they are more likely to be able to stay here in Canada and grow. So I think if we want to get to that, we have to figure out where the gaps are there. And some of that is investment capital. It's the talent piece, but then there's also some of their tax incentives. There's things like patent boxes, which are being used in other jurisdictions, which allow companies to earn money off of their innovation, but not be taxed at the high rate until they do become a commercially and profitable company. So incentives like that, tax measures like that would be really important to keeping some of those companies here.
Okay, je vous remercie.
Thank you. Are there any other components that you would like to add and to say to the committee about things we could do to support the biotech industry?
As I indicate in the budget, that's $2.5, almost $3 billion in investments flowing to the sector. I think the life sciences, the dedicated life sciences fund is really important. It's not a large amount of money. I think we need to make that happen, make it work, see the investments flow, and then grow that. It should be bigger. I think that's probably the biggest gap right now is venture capital. And we have to just be more, there's $60 billion in venture capital flowing to the biotech sector around the world. We need to actually access as much of that as possible to stay competitive. So anything we can do to get that, I think would be really important.
Bon, ben, le message est bien entendu.
We're hearing your message very clearly. Thank you. Let's hope that it will transfer to the next budgets for this government. Those are all my questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabriel. Just to emphasize one point that Mr. Casey made, which I think is critical because we run into it several times in my office, and that is in bringing in skilled workers from outside Canada. Not enough attention is being made to the partner of that person that's coming in. We look at that individual skills, but we've been successful in some cases, not in others. But you do need to find an opportunity for the spouse or the family so that that individual is comfortable coming and working. I think that was the point you really made, Mr. Casey.
Exactly right, particularly in our space where you're bringing in a chief scientific officer, and they are always married to somebody equally skilled. And so finding jobs for those people would be absolutely critical. I think would obviously benefit the economy more broadly.
Thank you. Then turning to Ms. Jansen, 5 minutes, Tamara, and then Mr. Fragaskatis after that. Ms. Jansen.
Yes, thank you very much. My questions will be to Mr. Fox. Although I'm an MP from British Columbia, I'm very close to the ocean here. So fisheries is a really important issue for me as well. And I have questions for you. The federal government's failure to effectively inventory small craft harbors and their state of repair or disrepair in your area there has resulted in a reactive, ad hoc, and emergency approach to maintenance rather than a proactive and planned approach to sustaining harbors. What wharfs and harbors are in the greatest need on the island?
Oh, that's a good question. I would have to say it's different. If you look at the actual structural sounding, I would say Rustico would be in the top of the list. If you're talking dredging and the need of a new harbor or a long-term solution, you're talking Malpeque. You can go down to North Lake or on the far end of the island and look at Georgetown and North Lake, and there's two wharfs down there that are very aging infrastructure that need to be enhanced. Mr. McCauley and I have talked about Georgetown before. He supports this project. I had a good meeting with Lawrence there back about 2 weeks ago, and it's what we need to do. We need to really take an in-depth capacity look at our wharfs and harbors going forward and actually get a real sense of where they actually fall in the condition of priorities.
Okay. Now, there seems to be a sense at the wharf that it takes someone getting hurt to force the government's hand and get them moving on overdue repairs. Would you agree?
I would agree. I hate to say that, but I would agree. My background is in law enforcement and emergency services for 25 years, and I've dealt with that firsthand. And that sometimes measures don't get put in place or infrastructure doesn't get corrected until somebody has come in harm's way.
Now, fishers out of Malpeque Harbor are almost at a constant risk of running aground and swamping. Yep. And I think Mr. Easter will agree that the government has been kicking the can down the road on a solution to this issue. What permanent solution do you see for Malpeque?
It is something that's been kicked down the road for roughly 20 years. Wayne's been a good advocate for this. I think we need to look at either repositioning the channel out through the dunes, working with the environment groups, and actually putting a straight entrance out while being sensitive to the actual environment there, or we do establish a brand new wharf off of Cabot Park. I can tell you that the province has had them conversations with DFO. We are prepared to make a long-term commitment as per infrastructure, road, and land off of Cabot Park Provincial Park going forward. But we need a solution now. If you look at the amount of money we've spent in dredging over the last 20 years, we're averaging on roughly $1 to $1.5 million a year, and we're doing that consistently every year.
Okay, now with two examples on opposite sides of the island, being Victoria, which was dredged last summer, and Malpeque, which needs to be dredged every year, how does the island's geological makeup with the sandstone base make the need for a proactive approach to dredging even greater?
The high priority Victoria, I'm very familiar with that. It's actually my riding, and it was dredged last year. But they're feeling, you got to look at the island the way the sand shifts. On the north side of Malpeque, of course, it's more volatile than it is on the south side. So we need to look at a geographical approach of how actually sand moves across the island. That's one thing I've suggested, is actually do a sand study and how actually sand is shifting.
Now, would you say that the federal government has recognized the recommendation in the February 2019 report titled Ensuring the Sustainability of the Small Craft Harbors Programs?
I would say regionally they have, but not in Ottawa. I don't believe that they've, the region realizes how that's an important study, I believe, but I don't think that's, made its way up into Ottawa to the people that should be hearing it.
Okay, thank you. Do I have any time left, Mr. Easter?
You do. You have a minute. Part of the problem in Ottawa is there's not really 200 Kent Street there. There's not a lot of fish in the Rideau Canal. Go ahead, Tamara.
Okay, I'm going to switch my question to Mr. Casey. We actually had we were looking at the amendment that the National Research Council is putting into this budget in regards to production. Have you seen that yet? Yeah. What are
I haven't seen the amendment, but I'm familiar with their facility and what they're trying to do.
Right. So I'm wondering, why do you think the cap was there in the first place? Are we not concerned that they're going to be competing with private company when it comes to production?
What is the cap that you're referring to? The production
There's
cap?
a cap on how much they can produce. I don't remember the exact
I would
wording.
suspect that cap is based on their capacity rather than the competition. I don't think that the global industry is fearful that NRC is going to move them out of the space. So I don't think that would be it. I think the investments in the NRC facility are absolutely fundamental, because that's a good example, as I said earlier, of a way of creating capacity to address the next challenge, but also in between really support the growth of companies and innovation and science and research in this country. So I think what that investment represents is really important.
And then,
okay, thank you. Sorry, Tamara, we are over by a minute. Mr. Fragaskatis, and I'm not sure whether Mr. Barrett's still here or whether it's Mr. Kelly that's going, but somebody give me a signal. Mr. Fragaskatis.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to the witnesses. Ms. McNaughton, every colleague has acknowledged your efforts, and let me just echo what they have said. It's really a moving thing to be here today, to have the privilege to listen to you articulate what you have done. And it is a clear example of what constituents can do when they work with their member of parliament to create meaningful change. So thank you very much for all your efforts. Mr. Chair, it's been mentioned, small craft harbors have been mentioned, the infrastructure gap has been mentioned. I don't have a question for Mr. Fox, but it is for my conservative colleagues. I think they would be wise if they looked at the record of the previous government from 2006 to 2015, if they want to understand the root causes of any infrastructure gap that could exist on small craft harbors. So that's just a point of clarification and advice and help for my conservative colleagues who are asking about that today. Mr. Casey, really interesting testimony. Thank you very much for appearing. Heard you on a podcast recently as well. I know you're quite active in this space, and I hope it continues. I think that Canada is well suited, and this government is only going to benefit when we have people like you sharing advice on what we need to do in this country. There was an op-ed written very recently in the Globe and Mail by Chris Albinson, the incoming CEO of Communitech in Waterloo. Let me just read a couple of excerpts from it to get your thoughts. Some things that really surprised me in it. I knew that we were doing well in Canada as far as tech is concerned, but we are very, very well positioned in this country, as the op-ed articulates. He said the following: in terms of return on invested capital, Canada is now the third most productive tech ecosystem on the planet after Silicon Valley and China, and is closing the gap as those rivals turn inward and stagnate. The other thing that stood out was this quote here. When you throw in our strong advantage in the next wave of technology, think artificial intelligence, machine learning, quantum computing, 5G, medtech, advanced manufacturing, our relative cost advantage, and parity and access to markets and capital, it's easy to see why Canada is poised to dominate. He uses the word dominate there, not just do well, but to really dominate the global landscape. Do you agree with this perspective? Could you expand on anything that stands out to you that I just read out? Anything there that you think we would benefit from as a committee to explore more on?
There's no question. In the biotech sector, the tech sector, the other tech sector I can't speak to, but certainly in the biotech sector, it's the same landscape. We have everything we need. We've got fantastic science, fantastic research, great universities. We're developing phenomenal companies. But as I said earlier, all of these are inherently mobile, right? They can go wherever they need to go to commercialize. And so, and it's very easy for them to pack up and move. And little things like tax incentives in Texas or whatever it would be able to track them down there. So we have to keep the pedal to the metal, whatever analogy you want to use for this, if we're going to actually stay competitive and keep those companies here. But there's no question that we are punching well above our weight, certainly in the creation of companies and the growth of companies. Where we are falling behind is creating those anchor companies where we take them across the finish line. And that is a key objective. I think that's the part, because once we get there, as you would know from your area in Southwestern Ontario, that's the thing. You create hubs and then more comes, and it just becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you look at Cambridge and Boston, there's a classic example where they built it there around the universities, and it's a thriving hub there. And that's what we need to do in Canada.
My time is very limited, sir. On the last point here, and certainly the op-ed focused on tech in general, and I know you're area of expertise is biotech, but I think there's a great deal of overlap. You and your, I think it was a response to Ms. Koutrakas, talked about IP and tax policy, and you've mentioned tax incentives here again. Could you delve into that a bit more? And I know it's unfair because we do have those are big areas, and I'm not giving you much time, but it seems that those would be maybe the two key areas, if I've understood you right, where we can focus on and really benefit from if we make some changes in those areas.
Yeah, and also be careful, right? So if you look at the TRIPS waiver, which has been in the news lately, there's a classic example of something that feels good, that feels like it's going to address a problem. I would argue that it won't, but the reality is that that's a really significant threat to a lot of our companies, because it's essentially sending out the message that, hey, look, if whatever you're working on becomes so valuable to the world that we all need it, we're just going to take it from you. And that then becomes a disincentive to investors. And so we have to be very careful about how we sort of look at the treatment of IP. IP at its very core is essentially the asset. So it's the mine, it's the forest, it's whatever other industry you want to use as an analogy. IP is the core of that company. So we have to really be careful on how we treat intellectual property in this country. The tax incentives, again, finding different ways to commercialize. So the patent box would be good. The SR&ED tax credit is one of the best tools that we have in this country, but other countries are looking at it and going, hey, we can do better. So if you look at Australia, they're trying to get ahead of us. We got to keep as competitive as possible with other jurisdictions so they don't get ahead of us.
Thank you both. We'll split the last 8 minutes, 4 minutes for the official opposition and 4 minutes for the government. Who wants to take it? You, Mr. Fast?
Yes,
I see you on the go. Go ahead.
Yes. First, just a point of order, Mr. Chair. Mr. Fragiskatos quoted a number of individuals. I'm assuming he was quoting from a document or documents. Normally, if that happens, we would ask that member to table those documents. Would that be appropriate in this case?
Mr. Chair, if I could.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, on that point of order. Well, the document is an op-ed from the Globe and Mail. I know Mr. Fast reads the Globe and Mail. I'm sure he reads.
We're not going to get into a long debate here,
his
guys.
Colleagues will read the Rebel, but I'm glad to provide the clerk any link to the op-ed that I read from. That's not a problem.
Okay, if you can provide the clerk with the link, that's great. Mr. Fast.
Sure. And Mr. Fragiskatos shouldn't presume that I read the Globe and Mail.
Oh, I apologize. It was a compliment.
I don't know what basis he would make that assertion.
We have witnesses here. Let's get to the witnesses.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to ask a question of Mr. Casey. You've come across as a bit of a cheerleader for the government on its innovation policy, but you also mentioned RIM, and we just happened to have had Jim Balsley here yesterday, who had quite a different perspective on the state of how we approach innovation in Canada. Now, he was talking about innovation writ large. You're focused on biotech. But he did mention the dramatic shift that has happened from a tangibles economy to the intangibles economy, which you just touched upon. I was waiting for you to touch upon that. I'm going to ask you to expand on that a little bit and also comment specifically on the absence of patent box legislation in Canada, which, by the way, I've also met with Abcelera, and they highlighted the fact that they're being encouraged to move out of Canada because we don't foster an environment in Canada that would keep our startups in Canada. Our commercialization is appalling. So if you could comment broadly on how we address the issue of a new economy, and how do we specifically implement policies that are going to keep our startups in Canada?
Which has to be at least a significant objective, right? Because we put all this investment dollars, we use tax credits and all of which are basically funded by the taxpayers. And so you create this fantastic collection of companies. And then if you allow them all to go, we miss out on the real commercial benefits of having those companies grow and become large commercial companies. And my reference to RIM really was more about what it did for the local community in Southwestern Ontario, in that once it was up and when it was at its peak, it just created more in entrepreneurs, more investment, and it's just sort of had a self-fulfilling prophecy. And just clearly on the patent box, just to sort of talk, that's an ability to take your IP and earn some dollars off of it while you're not yet commercial, and have those dollars be taxed at a lower level. So this is not something crazy. It's being done in other jurisdictions quite effectively. The UK, which has got a life sciences strategy. And I think that that's probably where I would go with this, which is to say, how do we connect all of this? We do everything in silos. We do pricing and reimbursement in a silo. We do investment in a silo. We do R&D in a silo. We have universities, talent, but is it all connected? And I think the Health and Biosciences Economic Strategy Table did a really good job of laying out all of the assets that we have and have identified a need for a cohesive way to bring it all together so that it is all connected, that it is truly an ecosystem. And like any ecosystem, like a coral reef, every piece of it has to be healthy and alive and vibrant if the whole coral reef is going to be healthy. And I think that that's what we need right now. So we've got all these great investments. We have the infrastructure. We've got the talent. We've got all the companies. Now we need to connect it all. And I think a coordinated life sciences strategy, not only at the federal level, but one that ties into all that's being done at the provincial level as well, because there are provinces that are equally pursuing the investment area, the tax area, the talent area. So how do we bring it all together? And that would be my advice. If we're going to do this and we're going to create companies that are anchor companies in Canada, let's do it through a strategy.
Last quick question, Ed.
Yeah, just a follow-up. So who's going to lead that effort in Canada? You're suggesting that broad policy to bring all those pieces together isn't there yet. Obviously, this budget doesn't deliver on that. Who's going to lead that effort to bring all these different pieces together to allow us to actually leverage innovation to significant prosperity within Canada?
I think it's a combined effort. I think it's industry, government, academia. We all have to come together. The HBEST, which is the Health and Biosciences Economic Strategy Table, did a good job of starting that process. They're going through a second phase. I think that that's the next part of this, is how do we do it? But I think it's incumbent upon every sort of stakeholder actually to do it together. I don't think we can turn to one and say it's the government's job or it's industry's job, because it's so connected both in Canada and then internationally. And I think that that's what's going to be required.
Ms. Serowitz, you'll get to wrap it up. You get about 4 minutes.
Thank you so much. I want to thank the three presenters for their excellent presentations. Ms. McNaughton, I'm going to use you as an example to anyone in my riding who feels like they can't get anything done at the federal level. So I will be using your name shamelessly, and I hope you don't mind. Most of my questions are going to be addressed to Mr. Casey. I think most of my colleagues don't know I actually worked in biotech for a number of years. When I came out of MBA school, I worked for a tiny company named GlycoDesign. I helped it go public. It ended up being sold to Inflazyme. So I'm very familiar with the issues within the industry firsthand. You had talked about, you were right in terms of indicating that we've got tons of amazing ideas. We have enough money for the startups. Many of our ideas are actually sold to sort of larger companies. One of the key issues that existed then, and I still think exists right now, is building that capacity to actually help grow a company actually to the next level. Because one part's the investment, but the other part, in addition to not only having the talent, and I do think we do attract our fair share of talent and we could do more, but it's building that capacity to actually be able to sort of run that larger organization. What can we do to actually help build that capacity?
Well, again, as I said, the investment part's always a big part of it, right? So the dollars that need to flow to the sector are absolutely critical. I think there are some roadblocks that some of the companies have also identified most recently. So if you look at AbCellera, Repair in Montreal, and other companies, they've identified the access to wet lab space is actually pretty critical right now. There's an absence of wet labs in this country, and I think we have to grow more of that. I do believe that the budget contains some dollars that will be dedicated towards that. And then it still remains, I think, ultimately there's going to be a talent issue at a certain point. But I think that most companies would like to stay here. And I think if you can overcome some of those, then I don't think there's a huge issue in losing them, other than making sure that we're keeping an eye on what other jurisdictions are doing to try and take those companies away.
Thank you. And my next question is, I think you mentioned something about there is a new approach to developing drugs. And so, of course, that has evolved. One of the criticisms of our budget, and I think Mr. Balsillie said this, and I'm paraphrasing him to a certain extent yesterday, where it's kind of like there's a number of people who feel like we have a setup, we kind of set up an old way of funding and supporting sort of industry, but we have 21st century problems. And so I guess my question to you is, we have put in, 2.2 billion for the biomanufacturing life sciences sector. If you had advice for us about, as we're setting up the programs, as we're setting up the flow of funding, how is it that we could make sure that we're setting it up in a way that is going to ensure that we are supporting Canadian companies in this new approach of developing drugs?
Yeah, I think you have to start out with the objective of making sure that it can be commercial. I think if it's done as an academic exercise, that, as I said earlier, that if you, in between the crises, you shutter it and not use the facility, that, or whatever facilities that are developed, that would be problematic. But I think if it's done with an eye to being commercial in between the crises, so that it's ready for when the time comes, that to me would be critical. And I think really the only way to do that is to work with industry. I think it'd be a mistake to try and do it on its own. When I say it, the government's own. And I think that working in partnership with industry, so that the commercial realities that are present in the global context are brought to bear in terms of whatever is being developed in Canada.
Okay, we are going to have to end it there, Julie. Sorry. I want to, on behalf of the committee, thank all three witnesses. Always a wide-ranging discussion over a number of topics. With that, thank you for your appearance. Thank you for answering our question, and have a wonderful long weekend for those that have the opportunity to do so. So with that, we will suspend for a minute and go to our next panel. Give people a time to stretch their arms, at least grab a coffee. We'll be back in a minute. Meeting suspended. Thank you all. just for the purposes of the record, welcome to meeting number 49 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Finance, the second panel of the day. And we are meeting on the subject matter of Bill C-30, an act to implement certain provisions of the budget tabled in Parliament on April 19th. And just for the information of witnesses, we are operating by the hybrid format, and under this system, only people that are speaking will show on the website system of the House of Commons, and that is made public. So with that, we will turn to the witnesses, and the first witness we will start with is the Retail Council of Quebec, Jean-Guy Côté, Chief Executive Officer. Jean-Guy, if you could hold your remarks to about 5 minutes or thereabouts, be helpful.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. My name is Jean-Guy Côté, Executive Director of the Conseil québécois du commerce de détail. First of all, I would like to thank the members of the committee for inviting me here today. It will allow us to present the vision and analysis of Quebec retailers on Bill C-30 and on the budget tabled a month ago. As you may know, the Conseil québécois du commerce de détail is an organization that represents the majority of Quebec retailers and is the leader of the retail sector in Quebec. The CQCD's mission is to represent, promote, and enhance the value of this sector and to develop ways to foster the advancement of its members. Given the limited time available for my presentation, I will focus on a few points. As you know, the past 14 months have been challenging for retailers. The pandemic has accelerated several transformations that were already underway in the industry, including the shift to e-commerce. In some sectors, such as fashion, retailers have closed and jobs have been lost. The various programs announced by the various levels of government have partially met the needs of retail entrepreneurs. The speed of their implementation is to be commended, although we really feel they should have been adapted as early as the fall of 2020. The federal budget extends the various wage, income, and rent support programs that were put in place during the pandemic. These programs will be phased out over the summer. While the recovery confirmed by this morning's sales figures appears to be well underway, some retail sectors are still very much affected by the revenue losses incurred. We hope that the gradual withdrawal of the various measures will be monitored and that if signs of economic stress appear, supportive actions will be taken. This brings me to the main topic of interchange fees, the fees charged by the major credit card companies on all transactions made in-store and online to retailers. These fees are sometimes very high percentages and are used to fund, in part, the credit card companies' generous rewards programs. Thus, all transactions made online by credit card are overcharged by an additional amount, usually paid by the retailer. Canada has the unfortunate reputation of having some of the highest interchange fees in the world. Research from the Kansas City Fed in 2019 showed that Canada was among the top countries for interchange fees, typically around 1.4%. Australia, in comparison, has reduced these below 1%, but most notably the European Union has capped them at 0.5%. The significant expansion of online commerce in the past month is leading to a greater reliance on credit cards to pay for purchases. This system will not disappear, but it needs to be controlled. This would be a welcome support to the retail industry, but more importantly, a gesture of fairness. Credit cards with more reward options are often supported by revenue from regular credit cards held by citizens with less financial means. In addition, these fees are regularly charged to charities in donation transactions. A cap has no financial impact on the federal government's public finances, but would be very welcomed by retailers. We are pleased to see that the budget opens the door to consultation with a view to implementing concrete actions in the budget update. This is an election promise made by the current government. We want and will be open to collaborate with proposed innovative and positive solutions for retailers. Our request is simple. Cap these interchange fees at 0.5% as the EU has done. Eliminate fees on GST or other tax amounts on transactions. In closing, I would like to thank the members of the committee for hosting us today, and I look forward to your questions.
Much, Mr. Cote. Turning then to the licensed childcare network, Ms. Pilak, Executive Director, and Ms. Bourbonnais McDonald. The floor is yours.
Hi there.
Go ahead.
We'll be sharing the 5-minute time. So my name is Cara Pilak, and I'm the Executive Director of Oak Park Cooperative Children's Centre in London. I'm also a member of the Licensed Childcare Network and chair of our advocacy subcommittee. I am representing LCCN today. Licensed Childcare Network is a group of early learning and licensed childcare organizations dedicated to high-quality childcare. We work collaboratively with the community to raise public awareness about the importance of early learning and licensed childcare.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for having us today. Céline Bourbonnais-McDonald, I am a professor at Fanshawe College in the Early Childhood Leadership Degree Program, as well as an adjunct associate professor at Western. And my area of focus is educational leadership. So currently, I've been connected with LCCN for the past 2 years as a researcher in the area of early childhood leadership and supporting their work in advocating on what a national early years framework would look like and what some of the key elements should be addressed via a budget requirement. The research that I'm conducting right now is focusing obviously in the London Middlesex area. We are looking at key stakeholders and trying to basically co-design an early years policy framework from the needs, the aspirations of the Southwestern Ontario region.
So LCCN is obviously incredibly supportive of the recent federal budget announcement that allocated $30 billion over the next years for childcare. A national childcare program benefits a country's population, economy, children, and overall well-being. We are especially supportive of your creation of a national childcare framework that is low cost and accessible to all Canadians. One of the key pieces of a national childcare framework is quality early childhood educators. These are the staff that work in childcare centers. I will call them ECEs from now on. ECEs provide support, learning, and care for children in Canadian childcare centres each day. Therefore, with the support of the federal budget, it is vital to make early childhood education a professional and fulfilling career for folks to enter and stay in.
So some of the information that you may be familiar with, either from a global perspective or from the province of Ontario, the Association for Early Childhood Educators and the Ontario Coalition for Better Childcare has just completed a status report on the workforce with regards to if we do expand to a national framework, what would that mean for a workforce that would be skilled, qualified, ready to hit the ground running, so to speak, when there's full implementation of a universal childcare approach. One of the key elements that we want to bring to your attention is that currently we are in a situation where 54% of the current educators are seeing a decrease in their job satisfaction, and another 43% are considering leaving the sector, and 13% are actively looking for job opportunities outside the sector.
So the workforce that makes up ECEs and childcare workers is 90% female, which includes a growing number of women of color. So historically and currently, ECEs and childcare workers are paid under a living wage. Their wages fall on a spectrum, with some just making minimum wage all the way up to $30 an hour. However, the average wage is around $21 an hour in Canada, which is about $42,000 annually. While this may be a feasible wage for someone who has a partner, someone who is single, this is not an adequate wage to support their life, to buy a vehicle, to buy a house to enjoy a vacation with their family. So due to the low wages in childcare, the average time an individual stays in the field is 5 years. So this high turnover rate means good quality educators are leaving the field due predominantly to the low wages and the high demands of the job. This turnover rate erodes the quality of the workforce in childcare. So we were not able to hold on to professionals for 15, 20 years up to retirement. So this is not just a Canadian, Ontario, or London challenge. The challenge is occurring across the globe, as reported by the Organization for Economic Development. The number of highly skilled, qualified ECEs is impacted by the increasing age of the ECE, difficulty attracting skilled and qualified ECEs, high staff turnover, low wages, lack of recognition, and the feeling of being undervalued and poor working conditions. So what is the solution to this problem? When thinking of creating a strong, affordable, quality early years system, it is important to consider the human infrastructure to the system. We need to support the career of early childhood educator as a respected, valued profession, one which will be seen as one to be proud of for the majority of one's working life. How do we do this? Higher wages, benefits, adequate vacation time, and job protection. This will improve the ability to attract skilled, highly qualified early years educators to increase the retention rate and allow childcare centers to have qualified, passionate staff who will stay in the profession, ensuring consistent learning and care for the children. LCCN advises that a national system consider a grid format that reflects the worth of the work of the ECE and their value to the families and communities. The approach to remuneration, where a new ECE would start at the rate of $25 an hour and grow their rate yearly, and if added qualifications are achieved, would create a predictable and dependable wage grid, similarly to the wage grid of the teaching profession.
So as we get near our statement, we really can't have a high quality childhood education and care system across the country, and for us, obviously more specifically in the London Middlesex area, without high quality early childhood educators. They're the key to a successful national childcare framework. And this was duly noted yesterday in the first policy response webinar with the guest speaker, the Honorable Ahmed Hussein, Minister of Families, Children and Social Development. It's very important to go beyond numbers. And when we consider expanding a system, we really need to look at some stories of current early childhood educators, and specifically one who is an experienced early childhood educator and is now completing a degree in Teachers College. And basically the rationale was that while her passion and her original intent was to stay in the field, considering the remuneration, the perspective of that career, because of being a single female, wanting to be fiscally responsible for herself, there is, at this point in time, a move away from her chosen profession. The second student, brand new to the profession, a recent graduate of the program, indicated a similar issue because of her health concerns. She would be entering another college, teachers college, so that she could continue working with children, but obviously outside of the system that desperately needs them. So those are just two lived experiences that I'm sure reflect not only the London area, but across our country and obviously right now across the globe. It is really important as the budget starts to look at navigating what are going to be key parameters within the budget supporting early years, that the remuneration of early years childcare professionals is recognized and acknowledged and part of the conversation. Again, thank you very much for sharing, letting us share our voice with you today. Un gros merci pour votre temps aujourd'hui.
Thank you very much for your time today.
To you both. We'll go to Unite Here Canada, Michelle Travis. Can you hear me? I don't see you. Are you coming? There you are.
I am here.
Ms. Travis, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for the invitation to address you today. I'm with United Canada, the Hospitality Workers Union. I'd like to address the new Canada Recovery Hiring Program and the extended wage subsidy proposed in the budget. When launched, the government said wage subsidy would keep workers attached to their jobs, whether furloughed or working. But the proposed hiring subsidy the proposed hiring subsidy is also supposed to make it easier for businesses to rehire laid off workers or bring on new ones. The problem is these programs aren't designed to help workers. Without tighter conditions, the new hiring subsidy could reward bad corporate behavior and bypass the very workers it's intended to help. We've seen too many employers, hotel employers in our industry use the wage subsidy and fire most of their staff anyway. While government is proposing a clawback for public company executives under the wage subsidy program, there's no clawback for private employers. For example, 3 companies tied to the Hilton Vancouver Metrotown have used the wage subsidy program, but terminated the majority of their staff in recent weeks. Other hotels that use the wage subsidy, the Sheraton Ottawa, Pan Pacific Vancouver, also terminated much of their workforce rather than agree or commit to bring them back when the pandemic crisis is over. Shortly, you're going
Michelle,
to
Michelle, I hate to interrupt, but if you can move your mic up a little bit, I believe, it's popping and that's hard on the translator's ears.
Okay, is that better?
That's better, yeah.
Okay, thanks. And you're going to hear shortly from workers from the Pacific Gateway Hotel, a federal quarantine site, whose owners are named in the wage subsidy, the CEWS registry. They recently fired over 70% of their staff. We want to know, are employers like these going to be eligible for the federal hiring subsidy? And unless the government adds clawbacks or restrictions, we think the answer to that is yes. We think laid off workers need a pathway back to their jobs. The new hiring subsidy should prioritize rehiring laid off staff before making outside hires. The clawbacks for public subsidies should apply to private sector employers as well. And the government should consider working with provinces on worker recall provisions like those adopted by the state of California and other jurisdictions to ensure workers who face pandemic layoffs are first in line to get their jobs back. And we think that would go a long way to ensure a just and feminist recovery. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Travis. Then turning to Unite Here Local 40, I believe we have Ms. Dillon and Ms. Cardona. I'm not sure who's making the presentation. Ms. Dillon, go ahead. Floor is yours. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Karen J. Dillon and I'm working with the Pacific Gateway Hotels. Thanks for inviting us today. I want to speak about the budgets, proposed government subsidies to businesses, and about our hotel. For 17 years, I worked as a room attendant at Pacific Gateway Hotel. I cleaned rooms and took pride in my work. I raised my children on this job. All that has changed. When the government took over our hotel as a quarantine site, they brought in the Red Cross. Other people were trained to do our jobs. The hotel recently fired 140 of us. This month, they terminated me and many of my co-workers. Out of 40 room attendants, they got rid of all but 4 workers. The owners are destroying our jobs. We are losing everything we worked so hard for. Some of us have been there for decades. Our hotel isn't closing. The owners just applied to build 2 more hotel towers next door. The owners used the wage subsidy but didn't put us on it. Our government is giving the hotel millions of dollars while we lose our jobs. And now the hotel owners should get another subsidy. We shouldn't lose our jobs because of the pandemic, especially with the people getting vaccines and travel starting soon. If the government wants to help us, they should stop giving money to our hotel or to any hotel owner that treats workers like we are disposable. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. And I didn't quite catch you in the beginning. Did you say Pacific Gateway Hotel?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Then we will go to questions. And we will start with, I'll give you the lineup. Ms. Jansen first, Mr. Fragascatis, Mr. St. Marie, and Mr. Julian. Ms. Jansen, floor is yours for 6 minutes.
Yes, thank you very much. I should put my timer on, but that's all right. Just warn me. Ms. Pilak, you might not know it, but many years ago when I was a young teenager, I used to work in a daycare. And I enjoyed it very much. But it broke my heart to see how hard it was on the kids when their moms and dads came and went. My sister also worked there. Of course, I was a young teenager, so I only did after school and I did summer. My sister worked there. She had papers. And she worked until she got married and had a family of her own. And I'm just wondering how many, you were mentioning there's high turnover. I know in my lived experience, much of the turnover was due to the women getting married and having children of their own. I wonder if you could speak to whether you've looked at that part of it.
Yeah, so the stat it's around 3 to 5 years that people stay in the field and then they leave. So, at the beginning of your career in your early 20s, you have a lot of energy. You may still live at home. You may not have the fiscal responsibility of paying rent and, buying your own groceries. So it's a great career for someone in their early 20s. However, if I can speak to my personal experience on the floor, I wasn't able to afford my own apartment working as an ECE. So that's why I moved up the field so quickly. So it's really not a living wage. So I think that is why so many women either decide to leave because they have a family, they get married, or they simply have to move on, as discussed in our,
okay,
it's just not enough wages.
So yesterday we had someone who did a report on it called Before You Leap, the Real Costs and Complexities of National Daycare. And they did a study and they basically were saying that a low estimate of the cost would be about $17 billion annual. And the most reasonable estimate would be at $36.3 billion based on, the many differences there are between, square footage, how many kids per teacher and all that kind of stuff. So what she was basically saying is that it will be basically not possible to deliver on this promise because of all those things. Have you looked at the numbers closely to see whether it looks like it makes any sense?
I'm going to pass that one to my colleague, Celine.
I have, and I think it's based on obviously different perspectives in the sense that do we do it gradually? I was involved with the implementation of full-day kindergarten in our Southwestern Ontario region. And again, I believe that the current proposal over a certain amount of years is perhaps a more prudent approach than going full speed ahead. The data that I am familiar with is comparing the return on investment with regards to what the province of Quebec did originally from the late 1990s moving forward. And when you bring more people basically to work, more taxes are being paid, and basically you end up I believe the program as it stands currently was breaking even. Now with the pandemic, obviously, there are certain concerns in any jurisdiction.
Yeah, I wonder, I know she also mentioned a study by Baker Gruber Milligan, and she was saying that only 1/3 of children in Quebec are in the higher quality CPE spots. How is it that we would end up avoiding that problem based on the numbers that you're seeing?
Yeah, I think one of the ways that we are looking at Quebec is not exactly as this is going to be our answer to all of our issues. We know that there's going to be various levels of engagement from parents because they do wish choice. So when we start to look at expanding a system, if we consider various ways of delivery, depending on obviously the various areas. So we know that across our country, there are schools that have in-house childcare. We have centers that are standalones. We have regulated, family-centered, so that if we look at all the various methods of delivery, I think we can really reduce the wait list and the number of children that can access.
90 seconds, Tamara.
You mentioned choice, and I think
Yes.
that was the big message from yesterday. Is that what Canadian parents are looking for is choice, and it looks like this this program doesn't actually give us that. She was suggesting rather that you would put the ability of parents into the parents' hand rather than impose upon them a system like this.
I beg to differ in the sense that right now, considering my own experience as a brand new grandmother with a grandchild in BC and young nieces and nephews in the Ottawa and Montreal area, we don't have choice.
Yeah, and in BC, actually, we just, because of the NDP program rollout, we just had 18 new facilities choose to shelve their plans to open because of the fact that this is being imposed on them. So choice is definitely going to be an issue, as well as capacity.
Sorry, if I could just interject quickly. So we speak about choice, however, there's currently not a choice. So even if a parent wanted to go to a childcare center, there's not enough ECEs, there's not enough spaces. So having a national plan will allow parents to choose to enroll their child in high quality care. Right now it's unlicensed, licensed, home care. It's just such an array of quality that a national program will allow for the safety and quality education of children.
Okay, we will have to move on to Mr. Fragaskatis, 6 minutes, Peter, followed by Mr. St. Marie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Professor Bourbonnais McDonald. Great to see you again, and Ms. Filak. Great to see you. Thank you for taking part. I do want to begin with you, and in fact, I'm going to hazard a guess that my entire 6 minutes will be spent questioning you both, not to take anything away from the other witnesses that have come before us today. Just to clarify something, though, and Mr. Chair, I put this to you as well. The idea that what's been proposed in the budget as far as a national early learning and childcare program is concerned, the idea that the federal government is trying to impose this on Canadians, on Canadian families. The idea that, as we heard yesterday, very surprisingly, and I'm being polite, that families would be coerced into taking part in the program to be created. This is just completely false. Parents will, of course, retain choice. Canada is a democracy. So I'm not sure where the sorts of questions that we just heard, and again, we heard some of this yesterday, Mr. Chair. It's bizarre. I was going to say borders on the bizarre. It is outright. It's just bizarre. So let's just clear that up. This is about making sure that, of course, parents have choice, but parents have options because it's very expensive. And that's my first question. In fact, whether Cara or Celine, I'm not sure who wants to take it, but I mean, childcare is very expensive throughout Canada. Can you expand on that? Can you can you go into that for us?
Yes, we are one of the few countries within the G20 that basically you are having parents, especially in some of our larger cities, Montreal, Vancouver, Toronto, and London is moving up there. The cost of having one child, if not two, in regulated childcare per year is even higher than tuition fees for post-secondary education. And so if we're trying to balance basically having quality care at the same time as maximizing the pedagogy and the curriculum that comes with care and learning, what is being proposed is basically giving children across the country an ability to move forward within the structured school system with a lot of potential. And I mean potential not only from the point of view of academics, but also their personal well-being, their self-worth. And so there's ongoing research. McMaster University is a key leader in that. And so it's really important to consider what parents want. What they need first is obviously, we discovered through the pandemic, accessibility, dependable care so that they can continue to do the work, whether they're working from home or whether they're frontline workers. And so with that in mind, a system that can offer that
regardless of whether we're in a crisis mode or not, is supporting families from that perspective. But also, I want to reinforce what we were talking earlier in our presentation, Karen and I, is the concept that the infrastructure of the system, the buildings, whatever that looks like, is dependent on a very strong, qualified workforce to make sure that our children are in the right environment. Parents have choice within that system, and which includes emergency care. Thank you.
No. I was just, I didn't want to cut you off. I was just saying that I understand exactly what you're saying. We do unfortunately have limited time. Yeah, Kara, absolutely. But let me just put something else, and you can take it in any direction that you wish. I certainly acknowledge the attraction and retention issues that you have pointed to. I think that is something that needs to be addressed by the federal government with the provinces, of course. And it's the nuances matter here for sure. I don't want to take away from that. But another question I wanted to put to you both is, what do you make of this argument that suggests, and I do hear it from especially the conservative side, that I think only the conservative side, in fact, that a tax benefit would suffice. Let's go down that path because they worry that the state is expanding and the national programs of this type are not necessary. What do you think of that sort of argument?
And that'll be the last question, Peter.
So, tax benefits are not childcare. So if you can think of it this way, I receive a tax benefit from the Conservative government and I go to sign up for my child for care. There's no care. At my personal center, the wait list is until September. Other centers, it's years. There's simply not enough spaces for the children and the parents who need them. So tax credits do not fix the system. We need a complete system overhaul where we invest directly in the infrastructure, directly in the educators, because there's simply not enough, and there's not enough good quality care right now. And we have to think of it as it's not the personal responsibility anymore. It's the social right of the child and the family to have the care that they need. Celine, would you like to talk more about this?
Yves, well said.
No, it's very helpful to us. And I know from previous conversations on the importance of early childhood learning, especially that both of you have put to me. So Chair, I turn it to you. Thank you very much.
All right. Yep. We're just about at the 6 minutes. I see Ms. Cardona come back online, and I know you had a short statement as well, Ms. Cardona, if you want to make that now. Can you hear me? And you're muted. Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you,
Floor is
sir.
yours.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the committee for inviting us today to join and speak about government subsidies for businesses, like the new federal hiring subsidy at the extension of the wage subsidy. As Michelle has mentioned before, the government has taken over.
Just hold on, Ms. Cardona. Go ahead.
The interpreter cannot interpret because of the sound quality with this witness.
Okay. Do you have where's your mic at there, Ms. Cardona?
It's on my headset. My computer died and I wasn't able to find a replacement.
Is anything coming through, Gabriel? Okay, I'm sorry. We're gonna have to, we can't continue unless we got translation. I don't think is there anything we can do there, Alexander?
We can try to connect with Ms. Cardona.
Okay, try and connect again. Do you want to give us one more line? Try it now.
Can you hear me now? Is this better?
Okay, try that. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Easter. I'd like to thank the committee for inviting us to join today to speak about government subsidies for businesses, like the new federal hiring subsidy at the extension of the wage subsidy. As Michelle has spoken before, the federal government has overtaken our hotel, Pacific Gateway, and since last year, the government also brought in the Red Cross, where we became displaced from our restaurant, kitchen, and housekeeping jobs. The hotel management used the federal takeover as an excuse to terminate me and 140 of my coworkers That makes 70% of our staff, and that out of that, over 2/3 of us are fired women. I worked there full time for 7 years as a hostess and server until the pandemic put me out of work. I am a single mom raising 2 children. Their ages are 12 and 14. The past year has been very stressful for me and my family, and my coworkers and I thought we would have a job to return when the pandemic had ended. All we've asked the hotel is to extend our recall rights due to the pandemic, because we only have a 12-year recall right. And all of us have pretty much have gone past that, and that's why we have been fired. The owners at Pacific Gateway both used the wage subsidy, but never used it for us. So will they be receiving the new hiring subsidy to hire our replacements? Public subsidies are supposed to help businesses keep us connected to our jobs during the pandemic, and this isn't happening. Prime Minister Trudeau also promised us a feminist recovery, but women are still bearing the brunt of firings at our hotel on the government's watch. These were living wage jobs that allowed us to support our families. After the latest round of mass firings, we went on strike on May 3rd. The federal government should not spend millions of dollars subsidizing a hotel that throws us away. So we urge you to stop using this hotel and don't allow hotel owners to use public subsidies at our expense. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Cardona, and not easy for you to make those comments given the situation you find yourself in. We thank you very much for that. Okay, we'll go back to our rounds, and we'll go to Mr. St. Marie, 6-minute round, followed by Mr. Julian.
Oui, alors.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Cardona, thank you for your testimony. It's very poignant, and I hope that the situation will change. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for being here. My questions will be for Mr. Cote. First of all, thank you for your presentation. It was very clear. And the first point that I'd want to come back to is the issue of the interchange fees charged by credit card companies charged to retailers. So you were saying that in Europe, it's 0.5%. Is that correct? Compared to 0.4 here, and it can go up as high as 2.5% here. So that's what you're asking the government to implement. Is that right? Yes, that's a request we've had for a few years running now, to get to the 0.5%. The European Union has shown through practice that this is possible without necessarily destroying the payment system. We can understand that the debit system in Canada is at a set rate, regardless of what is being cost or charged, the amount. But with credit cards, it's a percentage. So clearly with big transactions, it represents a substantial amount. So for small retailers who don't necessarily have the ability to negotiate with big suppliers, these credit card fees are difficult, and it's hard to have any kind of negotiating power. So the big American chains have that kind of clout, and they've managed to reduce the rates to a more interesting level. But for the small and medium-sized businesses, they can't do so, given that the banking system is under federal control. There could be some control put on that and have it brought down to a better level. So I think that this is true, and for both buyers and sellers or retailers. And the fact that it's charged on charitable donations, when you make such a donation, there's always this associated percentage that is charged, and it goes into the pockets of the credit card companies. So in a sense, it's a hidden private taxation, if you will, on those transactions. And over these transactions have been greatly simplified. This is a digital transaction, and there's nothing really that is absorbed by the big companies, and we don't understand why we shouldn't be able to reduce those percentages. Thank you. I'm really shocked to see that when you want to organize a charity, that at the same time you realize you're subsidizing Visa and MasterCard. So this should be taken into account under the minister's legislation. Now, she talked about it in the budget, but it's not in the bill. She said it will be in the fall economic statement instead. So this seems like it's an open secret that the government intends to trigger elections probably in the month of August. So would you have been happier to see this in the bill that we're discussing today? Well, yes, we were, I should say, agreeably surprised with what we found in the budget. It's clear for us that the government and the opposition parties are responsible for the electoral agenda. You will be deciding when the elections happen. But I do want to say that we participated actively in measures that might be implemented in the fall, and we should be working on this before the summer. So we are in touch with people in the department, and we will be consulting all the stakeholders to see how we can get something concrete in place for the fall. Well, the message is clear, and I hope you'll be heard. Another component that really struck me was the fact that you were saying that the big American chains managed to negotiate lower rates, so that gives them an advantage over smaller businesses that are often family-owned businesses. So I would have liked for this to be implemented more quickly, because I think that with the pandemic, credit card payments and online payments have increased. So is this something that you've seen amongst your members, more credit card payments than before the pandemic? Yes, we see a lot of this in electronic transactions. When we're in the actual store, you have a debit card, so you have that option that you should always use that before a credit card. It's more interesting for the retailer than the credit card. But it's hard to pay with a debit card online often. So are much more credit cards used in that situation. So
Finish up, Mr. Cote.
Thank you. I would just wanted to say, I don't know if you've had this experience, but using cash is something we see less and less. And sometimes we find ourselves with the same bills in our wallets for weeks on end. Credit cards are used more now. So this is the time that we should really deal with this issue and make this more fair and interesting for everyone. Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, do I still have time for an extra question? One quick one? Okay. We know that independent retailers are the hearts of our cities. I'm in Joliette, and the downtown is really supported by restaurants and small boutiques. So I'm very worried that the pandemic is going to result in the closure of many of these small businesses. So how are these retailers dealing with the fact that they've had to go into debt over the last year? What is the situation on the ground? Well, I think it's a very fragile situation, and it really depends on the sectors. Some businesses have come out of it very well. If you've gone by your hardware store, your local hardware store, you see that everything's fine for them. But people who are in fashion, it's been a lot more difficult. So clearly there's businesses that have gone into debt. Some will not survive. Some will come out of it battered and bruised. So we have to ask some questions about it. There are certain businesses that are just the lifeblood of our ridings and our downtown. So it's important. Thank you.
Thank you both. Mr. Falk will follow Mr. Julian. Mr. Julian, you're up.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks to all of our witnesses for your compelling testimony. And I certainly hope that you and your families are staying safe and healthy during this pandemic. Ms. Dillon, Ms. Cardona, thank you so much for bringing your reality to Ottawa. Kind of bursts the Ottawa bubble about what is actually happening on the ground. My questions to both of you. First off, how much money is this government giving to the owners of Pacific Gateway? What has been the impact of the owner basically trashing the collective agreement on you and your family. And what is your message to Mr. Trudeau today on the issue of making sure workers are actually supported during this pandemic?
Who wants to start? Ms. Cardona? Or
we have been trying to figure out how much the federal government is giving the hotel, but they are keeping that very, very secret. The numbers that we've gotten is between $500,000 a month to over $1 million a month.
$1 million a month.
Yes, a month. That's what people have heard through the grapevine, but we haven't been able to get real information on that because the government and the hotel have refused to give that information to the union. What was your other question, sir?
Well, the impact on you and your family, and what is your message for Mr. Trudeau today?
It has impacted everybody's family. I don't have a mortgage, but I know many of my coworkers that do, and they're on the verge of losing their homes. I'm living on a day-to-day basis financially because as much as I appreciate the EI and CRB, those subsidies just are not enough with the Vancouver market to this day. And the message that I would like to give Mr. Trudeau is, please follow through with having a feminist a feminist recovery. Women are suffering. We are getting the brunt of it. We use our wages to help our community as well because we make the grocery shopping and everything. So just please reconsider subsidizing a hotel that is breaking all the rules.
Ms. Travis?
Sorry, it was to Ms. Dillon.
Okay. Ms. Dillon?
The same question, the impact on you and your family. And what is your message to Mr. Trudeau
trying to find her here in my screen. There you are, Ms. Dillon. Go ahead. You'll likely have to drop your mask. Sorry, Ms. Dillon.
Yeah, no problem. My message is to Mr. Trudeau. Stop giving millions and millions of dollars to our owner when we are losing jobs. So it's such a hard time for everybody. Some ladies working more than 40 years in the hotel and they are really close to retire. And I don't think they can find another job somewhere else. So please, Mr. Trudeau, stop giving them that much subsidies and so it's not such a good thing.
Thank you, Mr. Julian.
Thank you very much. Now to Ms. Travis, because we've seen this government intervene repeatedly. In fact, last June, they presented legislation that would have put people in jail if they made a mistake and wrongfully applied for their CERB benefits. We saw CRA demanding repayment at Christmas time. We found out that CRA is now, again, for emergency benefits that go to regular families, trying to force the victims to pay in the case where somebody has fraudulently misused their SIN number to apply for somebody else's CERB benefit. And yet we've seen big businesses act with impunity. We've seen them pay dividends. We've seen them with massive executive bonuses. And your message today, Ms. Travis, from what I understand, is that what we actually need is to ensure that collective agreements are respected, ensure that the wage subsidy actually goes to protect jobs, and that should be retroactive. Is that a fair summary of the powerful message you're bringing today?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the Globe and Mail has done a series of stories about the problems with the wage subsidy program. And, I think the idea of the wage subsidy makes a whole lot of sense. And, we don't have a problem with employers getting access to that program. Our problem is that, it was described as a way to keep workers attached to their job. And what we don't see is that happening. We've seen employers use it selectively. Maybe they use it to cover management, or maybe they just cover a skeleton crew. And really, and what we've seen in other countries is they've used it to make sure the workers stay attached, that money is flowing through to workers who need that, but it's really critical to keep that connection. And we understand, it's gonna be a while for business to come back in the hotel sector. And our concern is that now another subsidy is coming, and we are concerned there are gonna be no restrictions or controls on who is able to qualify for that. There's some limited restrictions, but in terms of, are you going to be able to get access to that subsidy after you've eliminated your staff and you replace them with less? Will you get a hiring subsidy to hire for the replacements? And that's a problem. And regardless of whether you're in the union or not, we've seen this affect hospitality workers across the board. Non-union workers started losing their jobs last year. Elisa referred to this, in union contracts, you may have 12 months of recall in your contract, but we don't bargain contracts with a pandemic in mind. And what we've asked all of our employers is to consider extending the amount of time workers can come back to their jobs to get through the pandemic. And we know the work is coming back. And we want to make sure that those workers who've invested 10, 20, 30, 40 plus years of their lives in these hotels will have first shot to get their jobs back. We think that's fair. It doesn't cost the government a dime, and it's the decent thing for employers to do. And unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of employers use the pandemic as an opportunity to get rid of long-term staff, drastically roll back economic gains they've made over years, and that shouldn't be happening. And we don't want to see government programs used to benefit them and not help workers.
Okay, thank you all for that interchange. We'll go to Mr. Falk on a 5-minute round, followed by Ms. Sirowitz.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses. Some very interesting stories, and I want to get to several of you in the 5 minutes that I have. But I would like to start with Karen Celine. You've talked about the merits of a national daycare program. And I just want you to know that I live in a riding and I represent a riding of 19,000 square kilometers. I have many, many small communities in my riding, and my constituents avail themselves to childcare through the use of neighbors, family, friends. And I'm just wondering how you think a national daycare program would provide my constituents with choice.
Ted, so the dream of the national program is to make it accessible to large cities, medium cities, and small rural cities that you are speaking of. So we envision that home childcare that's currently running will be a part of the program. So small houses with 4 or 5 children will be involved in this national program and also be supported. So the idea that it will provide choice because it will support all sizes.
That's not the way it's been presented, but okay, thank you for that answer. But I think it's actually going to take away choice, and there won't be fair compensation for folks that are outside of the program that's being presented as a national program. So my next question, I'm going to go to Elisa.
Point of order, Chair. Chair, point of order.
I'm muted. Go ahead.
One can quarrel with points in the budget, but as I mentioned before, these are just outright falsehoods that we continue to hear.
That's not a point. Not a point of order.
Point of order, Peter.
Point of order.
Point of order.
Point of order.
Just hold on now.
That's
we
disgraceful,
got 3
Peter.
points of order here. Mr. Kelly.
I let it go last time, but Mr. Fragiscatos has got to stop insulting members of the committee because he doesn't like the questions that they ask.
Mr. Kelly, that isn't a point of order. We're into debate here. So I'm going to go back to Mr. Falk.
Well, Mr. Chair, I would agree with Mr. Kelly. Mr. Fragiscatos is an embarrassment to his constituents with his
come on, Mr. Chair.
Now, come on now, Mr. Let's not get into this. Let's question the witnesses. If
Peter started this.
That don't matter who started it. I'm trying to finish it.
Well, I hope you're not taking away from my time, Mr. Chair, because I do have some very important questions.
I'm not taking away from your time. I got it on lap here, so we're okay.
Very good. Okay, thank you. To Elisa and Kranjit, thank you so much for your testimony. I'm very intrigued with your story, and I'm sorry for the situation that you find yourselves in. So, if I understand you correctly, your hotel that you were employed at the Pacific Gateway was hijacked by the Liberal government, and you as long-term employees were fired. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Okay, and were you then replaced with federal workers?
The Red Cross has been doing work inside, and they also contracted out another company to do some cleaning in the hotel. And only 30 workers have been called back since January of this year.
So do they give you a reason as to why they wouldn't have continued on with the services that you've obviously done very well for the past 7 years?
No, there hasn't really been a clear answer to that. It all falls down to lack of training, which I don't believe, because we have thousands of hours of training and we are extremely trainable. We are very good at our jobs. Housekeepers can do it with their eyes closed. It was just not an opportunity given. It was just ripped away from us.
So this liberal federal government came in, hijacked the hotel, made it a quarantine hotel, charged the new guests, and I use that term lightly, exorbitant rates, and then fired you as long-term workers to replace it with Red Cross and their own employees.
Yes, and after the pandemic, they want to replace us for minimum wage. So for example, someone makes $21 an hour, they want to reduce that person's wage to $15, $20. They want to remove the union healthcare plan and incorporate their own where the employee pays for it. They also want to do an RSP contribution where it's a good idea, but when you're making minimum wage and paying for your medical, it just doesn't make sense.
Right. So Ms. Cardona, you've said you're living day to day. How has this impacted your family?
Oh, significantly. I can see my children behave differently because they feel the stress of it too.
Right. Okay, and so you're obviously able to take advantage of the CERB at this point, and that's being proposed to be rolled back later on this year. Where do you see yourself going?
I am currently on EI because if you're on EI, you don't apply. You cannot take the CERB. It's either or. Where I see myself is continue to fight to get my job back with living wages, with healthcare, with seeing my coworkers being able to retire in their job that they gave 46 years of service.
Last question, Ted.
Okay. It seems as though this Liberal government has created the situation that you find yourself in. Have they at all come to your aid and offered to help you in reestablishing yourself as an employee at Pacific Gateway?
We haven't received any response from them.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Thank you all. We'll go to 5 minutes, Ms. Sirowitz, followed by Mr. St. Marie.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank all witnesses for being here today, and thank you so much for your important testimony. I'm going to start with Unite here first, and maybe I'll start with you, Ms. Cardona. Although I really want to thank all three of you for your just really, I think, very passionate testimony today. I just want to start off with two clarifying statements, Ms. Cardona. You had, to the question of how much money the federal government was giving to the hotel, you had indicated $500,000 to $1 million. I just want to make sure that it's clear on the record that this is what you're hearing through the grapevine, but you do not know whether that is a true whether that is actually a true amount or not. Can you clarify that, please?
Absolutely. It is not a true statement. It is just what we have heard through the grapevine. Both the federal government and the hotel have kept it very tight-lipped on how much they're actually receiving on a monthly basis.
Thank you. And the other thing you had mentioned that you were fired, and so there's a statement I just pulled off online, and it just said that, and it says from the hotel, they said that no one has been fired, but there's been permanent layoffs. Would you say that that's an untrue statement, or would you say no, that you have been fired?
Permanently laid off, it's fired. Okay. It's just a different way of saying
it's the same thing. Well, thank you for that. And then I want to get to just in terms of supports. Mr. Falk asked the question, one of the questions I was going to ask, which is what supports are you currently receiving? And thanks for letting us know that you are on EI. One of the key programs that we have, just because you were talking a little bit about the need for more supports for women, and there's a lot of compassion for women, for single women who have kids. We have introduced a national child care plan. Do you think that was a really positive addition and announcement to the federal budget 2021?
I personally cannot speak of that because my children are so old now that I wouldn't have been able to take advantage of that or even use it at any point.
But do you think it's good for other women who might have much younger kids? Do you think that's a program as we put into place that might be a great program for women across this country?
Fair enough. It is help, but there needs to be. It branches out into so many directions, right? You cannot just hit one branch and expect all the apples from the tree to fall at the same time. That is a great start. But I do feel that there is place for improvement.
Thank you. Well, I really appreciate it, and thank you for your testimony. And with all heart, I really do hope that things are resolved between the union and between the management at Pacific Hotel. I'm going to move on to Ms. Bourbonnais-MacDonald. You've raised a number of really great issues around wages. And I don't know if you have a specific recommendation, because I don't know if necessarily the government can come in and say, hey, we want to make sure everybody gets paid a certain amount of money. So one, I didn't know if you had a specific recommendation on that. So that's one part of my question. The second is, we've made a number of investments around immigration in our budget. And we know that we've got a declining population. We know that we have a retiring population. And I wonder to what extent you believe that maybe some of the changes that we might have implemented that provide some flexibility to allow, more of the talent that we need into the country might be helpful in terms of fulfilling the need moving forward around childcare.
Very good questions. The first one, I believe that the area of research that I look at for policy is grassroots, in the sense of policy being made and constructed by those that are most directly impacted. So when you think of early years educators, and if I had a focus group asking, okay, we're talking about wages, what would be the message? The message basically from the London Middlesex area is very much a grid approach. And that conversation, I believe, can be done across the country. So again, that can be part of the key principles within a national system that reflects obviously the needs from Newfoundland to the Northwest Territories to Vancouver, so that we have as a country an overview of what that grid could look like, depending obviously on each province and territory's perspectives. The other is immigration. The issue is that as a globe, we're facing the same situation in countries that have very similar ways of forming, of training early childhood educators. New Zealand is exactly in the same situation. Ireland is in the same situation. So for us to draw from across the globe does bring issues. It means that we need to have programs here to help train if we bring.
We are going to have to move on. I'd like to get 2 minutes to Mr. St. Marie and Mr. Julian, and then get Mr. Kelly and Ms. Kotrakis in about 5 minutes each. 2 minutes, Gabriel, if you could, please.
Oui, merci.
Thank you, Wayne. So, Mr. Cote, you mentioned during your presentation that the government is going to extend the support programs, such as the wage subsidy and the rent subsidy. But in terms of the wage subsidy, there was also the possibility of having this new hiring program. So in all cases, the rates will be slowly decreasing. So I'd like to know about what you really wanted to say about all of those programs and your criticism for the rent subsidy and as to the changes that should be made. Thank you very much. Yes, there is the extension, and that's very well accepted in one sense because the pandemic is not necessarily over. There are still many restrictions on non-essential businesses, but you have to understand that the retail sector is not exactly uniformly hit, as some have suffered many more than others. So there always needs to be flexibility, and that's what we're asking for in the reductions that are planned ahead, and not just a mathematically determined reduction. So we should have the possibility, if there are problems that pop up in certain sectors more than in other economic sectors, the possibility of keeping these programs for a longer time. That's the first thing I'd say. Secondly, we always have to remember as well that the hiring program is an excellent initiative. However, for Quebec and some areas of Canada, there is a labor shortage, and so there are not enough workers, and with certain restaurant workers who went to work in the retail sector will return to what they love to do first. So there'll be a great challenge, I think, for retailers to get people back into the stores and ensure that operations can run as before. Thank you very much.
Thank you both. Mr. Julian, go ahead, a couple of minutes, 2.5.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. And I'm going to come back to Ms. Travis, Ms. Cardona, Ms. Dillon. Ms. Zarowitz, who's a good friend, asked a very disingenuous question about the amounts in federal subsidies that have gone to Pacific Gateway, because she knows full well that the federal government has refused categorically to actually release the amounts. So Mr. Trudeau has been keeping those amounts secret. I wrote to the finance minister in January 5th, actually, and have still not received a response to that. So do you not believe that these amounts, given that it's your taxes that paid for these subsidies that are going to the CEOs and are being, in some cases, misused, that the government should actually be transparent and let Canadians know how much of the subsidies have gone to these companies, so we can compare whether there has been layoffs, whether there has been respect for the collective agreement, or whether the amounts have been used for dividends and executive bonuses. Isn't that transparency important?
Ms. Travis, go ahead.
Yes, the transparency is critical to understanding who accesses the program, how much they're receiving from the program, how long they use the program. The only way we find out any information about how much is used is through public companies that have to put that information into their corporate filings. So for example, I mentioned the Sheraton Ottawa, they've fired 70 out of their 85 workers. We know through a public filing that the owner pulled $500,000 from the wage subsidy program. They just eliminated the full staff. Now there's another hotel that they're using it for too, but still it's a lot of money for 2 hotels. And I think the bulk of it was for this one. So that's a problem. We don't know how much the owners from the Pacific Gateway pulled out of the program. We don't know how much was pulled for the Hilton Metrotown. And that transparency is critical, but we also think rules and conditions on any sort of public funding is critical too. So, and again, like I look across the border, they've very imperfect in the way in which the public money has been given out, but they have done a little bit of a better job in terms of having some transparency about how much money has been pulled out of the system and from the government. And so you do get a sense, has that money actually reached workers or hasn't it? And that's helpful to know. And frankly, there are a lot of programs that are out there and on the federal level, and we don't know which companies are tapping it, like the HASCAP program, which companies are getting low interest, fully backed loans from the government, and how much are they getting? That's information that the public should know. because the government's absorbing the risk. And again, these are employers, some of whom are eliminating their entire staff. And we're not talking about small mom and pops a lot of times. We're talking about wealthy investors, real estate developers, major private corporations who are very sophisticated, and they're real estate owners. And the hotel industry is a real estate industry, and these are valuable assets. And you have to have deep pockets to buy a hotel. And I think it's a little bit of a misconception. I think these are just small operators.
We're going to have to end it there. We're considerably over. We'll go to Mr. Kelly, followed by Ms. Katrakis. Mr. Kelly, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll maybe bring Ms. Dillon back into this and get her views on some of the similar questions that were put to Ms. Cordona. Ms. Dillon, you worked, I think you said, for 17 years, and now you are out of work. Are you you're on employment insurance, or do you have any support whatsoever for yourself and your family during this time of unemployment?
Did you pick up on that question, Ms. Dillon? Go ahead, but you will have to drop your mask. I'm sorry to have to ask you to do that.
Yeah, I've been working in Pacific Gateway Hotels for 17 years, and I am on EI right now. So how long we can survive with the EI? So we need our jobs back. That's why we are fighting to get our job back.
So the stated purpose of the wage subsidy, and it's a purpose and a goal shared, I think, by all Canadians. Certainly, it's a purpose and a goal that I share to keep employees engaged with their employer during a time of shutdown due to COVID. Fair to say this program has not helped you. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, when the COVID started, like virus was here in last March, Mr. Trudeau was saying nobody will lose their jobs because of pandemic. He was like making sure with everybody, but now so many people like us losing our jobs. And yeah, we are getting help, whatever, like EI or something else. We are on EI right now. So I think the owners should do some agreements with us. As soon as the business will back, he can call us back.
So your hotel is not actually shut down. Your hotel is in the hotel business. It's one of the fortunate ones that now has quite a lucrative business in being selected as a quarantine hotel.
Yeah, it's a quarantine hotel. Yeah, the owner is making more money than normal time. Because government is paying more than maybe $1 million to him. So I don't think he wants to open yet.
All right. I'm going to go back to Ms. Travis for a quick moment about the whole notion that she mentioned in the last round about transparency. And I think, again, Canadians want to see those who cannot work and whose businesses have been closed due to the pandemic to be supported. It's the right thing when governments shut down a business to ensure that people are supported. But when Canadians think that money is being misspent, or that money is going is going out the door and yet failing to reach those that are being targeted by these programs, they get very upset. So can you talk about the need for transparency for these programs?
Ms. Travis?
Yes, so I agree. I mean, transparency is critical. This is public money being given to employers to subsidize the business to keep workers attached to their jobs, and that isn't happening. So if we don't know how much they've received, and if we don't know how many workers have actually been covered under the program, how many workers, how much of their pre-COVID staff have they retained or furloughed and put on the program, we have no idea. And so when we ask employers, tell us about the wage subsidy program, we don't have to tell you that information. So that's very challenging. And given the stated purpose of the program was to keep workers attached to their jobs, and we don't see that happening, frankly. It's rarely do we hear of employers that have used it to cover their entire staff. That's a problem. And we're concerned that the federal hiring subsidy is going to be more of the same. And will there be any conditions on the program? Will we know who's used the program, how much they receive, how many of their workers that they laid off because of the pandemic are they bringing back by using this subsidy?
All right, thank you.
Before they look elsewhere.
Yeah, have I got time for a question?
You got the last question, if you could, Pat.
To Monsieur Cote. We had witnesses yesterday. Well, we've had testimony at the Finance Committee about indebtedness within the small business community, and I know your members, not all of them are small businesses, but many of them are. Do you want to comment on the level of indebtedness and how small business, the debt that they've had to take on to get through this pandemic may threaten recovery? Can you talk about debt?
I don't have specific numbers of the indebtedness of my members, of the small or medium sizes members that I've got inside the association. But what I know is some of them are in pretty bad shape right now. And on the contrary, it's going to impair their capacity to rebound after the pandemic. And some investments are on hold because of these. And since the interest rates are not maybe fixed for the next few months, there are some concerns what's going on and what's going to happen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Turning into Annie Kotrakis. Annie, and we will probably have time for one question if you want one, Ed, and maybe Mr. Fraser. Okay, Annie, 5 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to all of the witnesses for your presentations and your comments this afternoon. I have a few questions for Mr. Cote. To carry on with after Mr. Kelly's question, as we know, there are several programs and there are several to help businesses and are intended to help small businesses in dealing with financial institutions. And I'm certain that there are many of your members that will be able to use these programs. So how will this program help the retailers that you represent? And secondly, how do you think that an improvement to this program would help retailers? I thank you for the question. I don't have any specific reactions from my people on this, but I think that the access to capital is always a part of the field of expertise, if you will. As some retailers have a better chances of getting holds of funds, but what we've seen is that there are certain trends in retail, like in e-commerce, and so things are easier on that front than it was before. However, what we've been able to see in terms of online purchases during the pandemic is that a lot of people will go back to bricks and mortar stores afterwards. So we have to ensure that retailers have the capacity to work in both modes. Could be an interesting change that you could make for small and medium-sized businesses to the program. Yes, but have your members shared any comments about the actual programs and how they will help with within the pandemic? Well, what the members are saying is that the wage subsidy program and the rent subsidy program were very welcome and helped them to get through, especially for the small businesses and some of the medium, but that helped them to get through these waves that we've had of COVID. But keeping employees is of primary importance because the expertise that they have, they don't want to lose. So the wage subsidy has allowed them to keep certain employees, especially in with small and medium-sized retailers. They don't want to lose their salespeople. My last question: how is the subsidy for small and medium-sized businesses to transfer to digital services? will help the council that you represent? Well, we set up a pilot project a few years ago to turn more to the digital world for small and medium-sized businesses. And this was adopted and supported by both the governments of Quebec and Canada. So this change has really allowed us to help small and medium-sized businesses to make this change when they had no idea how to launch into it. So you have to understand that for some, they don't have a lot to invest in these kinds of operations. So any support from the council can really help them to do this and change over to that kind of sales more quickly. Thank you.
I'm willing to share my time.
Go ahead, Annie. What did I lost you?
Yeah, I said I have no further questions, and I'm willing. I'm a good share. If anybody wants to take up some of my time,
I'll just take your time for a minute because I got a question to Ms. Travis, and then we'll go to one question from Mr. Fast and one from Mr. Fraser. This problem at the Pacific Gateway, Ms. Travis, the wage subsidy can only be claimed if it is paid employees, and that application has to be submitted to the CRA to get the wage subsidy. So there would have to be a record. They do actually have to pay an employee in order to get the wage subsidy and then apply through the CRA. What's your comment on that? How is that happening? Are they paying other employees and getting the wage subsidy, or what's going on here? Do you know?
Well, we know that they didn't use it for the workers that were laid off before they were fired. So we know that. In terms of information about who they did use it for, I can make an assumption, but we don't know because they haven't told us. So they could have used it for management, or they could have used it for the skeleton crew that they have immediately on staff, but we just don't know. We know that there are two owners, and both of them appear on the CEWS registry. But we don't have any other details about when they used it, how long they used it, who they used it for. We've requested the information. We haven't gotten a response. But we know that we do know there are a lot of workers that didn't benefit from the program, and they didn't put them on as furloughed workers.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fast, and then Mr. Fraser to close. Ed, one question.
Thanks so much, Chair. I'm going to stick with Ms. Travis. Just for clarity, in the Pacific Gateway firings, how many employees were actually fired or laid off?
Over 140 were fired and within recent weeks.
And obviously the hotel is still operating, so there are employees, whether through a contract or otherwise, working in the hotel, correct?
That's right.
Are they working for the same wages that your members would have been working for, or are these lower wages? Do you know?
That's a good question. We don't know that. Again, the Red Cross is in there. We don't know what they're paying them. We did hear that they, again, you have to verify this. We did hear that they, sought employees from the street and trained them to do some of the work that our members would be doing, and that they've also hired a cleaning company. Again, we don't know what they're paying them.
Okay.
Okay. Oh. Thank you. Okay, Ed, one more supplement.
One more. You obviously mentioned that the CEWS program has been a bit of a disaster when it comes to putting in safeguards that would prevent what happened at Pacific Gateway and other hotels. Have you seen any safeguards implemented with respect to the new hiring subsidy program? Or has the government, is it simply repeating the same mistakes it made with CEWS?
I think it's too early to tell because it's a proposed program, and I don't know if they've issued all the rules. The only thing that just in what we've seen so far in a write-up about the program, and it's not supposed to go into effect until after the budget passes, and maybe it starts in June, is that it's only supposed to be used by Canadian-based private companies. Other than that, it's not clear to us what conditions or restrictions would be built into the program to avoid some of the abuses that we saw under the wage subsidy program, which continue.
Thank you.
And that program is actually in this bill that we're discussing, right, and Budget Implementation Act, so it isn't out there yet. Right. Mr. Fraser, you'll get to wrap it up.
Look, I'll
be very quick in my question. It's for Ms. Pilak. I really enjoyed your testimony on the issue of childcare, and I'll follow up where my colleague, Mr. Falk, left off on the issue of choice in childcare. I live in a rural community. I've got a mix of small towns and really rural areas. For some people, the issue is one of question of whether they can afford it, and programs like the Canada Child Benefit are a big help. But for communities like the one where I grew up in Miragamish, there isn't a child care facility there. You might have a neighbor who can help you out, but you're not going to a registered facility. I'm curious if you can elaborate on your explanation that the vision for a national child care strategy is to extend universally access to affordable child care, whether you live in a big city, a small town, or a rural community, and just explain in a little more detail what you meant when you said for a lot of people right now, there is no choice.
Yes, so I just like to reply to an earlier comment of perhaps a neighbor can watch the child or a family member. Well, that's a privilege to a chosen few. There are single mothers, there are people of color who do not have that option to have quality childcare. So this is a public program. We're taking away personal responsibility, and childcare is a right. A child has a right to quality early childhood education at the start of 0 until they're 18. So I'm just going to say that off the hop. But choice meaning that we will fund small home daycares, we will fund large daycares, we will fund childcare all across the country, from my center to a center in Newfoundland to a center in Saskatchewan and Manitoba. So no child will be left behind, regardless of color of their skin, the amount their parents make, or whether or not they're a single parent. So I'm very passionate about each child having a right to the program, whether or not you are privileged enough to have someone to watch your child in the neighborhood.
Thank you so much for the question, Mr. Chair. I think that brings us to the end.
It does, and certainly to we've had an interesting panel here. Some great testimony, a few exchanges between members, which is not altogether unusual. But that will wrap up, I think, I don't know how many panels we had this week. So I want to, on behalf of the committee, thank all the witnesses for coming, for taking the time out of their day to make their presentations, and for answering our questions. And with that, look at this, no finance committee meeting tomorrow. Everybody on the committee I know will be glad. So with that, thank you all. Meeting adjourned. All the best. Have a good weekend.
Have a good long
Bye-bye.
weekend.
Bye-bye.